Absolutely. And, Washington is a conservative city generally when it comes to architecture. And you can go back to the debate about the Jefferson Memorial. It's one of the last of the big, monuments to the Founding Fathers to come online. And there was huge debate about whether that should be a modern memorial or whether that should be what it is, in fact, which is a take on the old kind of Roman-style pantheon. Washington has built relatively few really contemporary buildings, and I think that's a problem. However, I don't think it's a bigger problem when you get into the monumental core of the city, where you're dealing with the big themes of our government. You're dealing with the history and the great people who've made contributions. And I think naturally there is a tendency to be more circumspect and to be more cautious in the messages you send. You can build this arch and people may learn to live with it. What happens, however, is they forget what they lost. They forget what it was like before it existed. And that's an irretrievable loss.
Philip, you have a broader beef complaint with President Trump's plans to change how the city looks. There's, of course, the proposed giant new White House ballroom. There's proposed new Garden of American Heroes with a lot of statues just right on the Potomac River on the D.C. side. What is your more fundamental objection?
There are two things that I really worry about. Is the ostentatiousness of the new things that are being planned, and that doesn't fit with the American design vocabulary of Washington. But then there's this bigger loss to design review and oversight, and an ideal that things can be improved through input, through collaboration, through listening, through tweaking and development. So much of architecture is about architects presenting ideas, getting a lot of criticism, going back literally to the drawing board and coming back with a better idea. There's a back and forth there that represents an ideal of how we can interact with each other in a democratic and civil way. And that's being lost. And once that's lost, then the next president can basically do what he or she wants to do. And the care over 2 centuries with which people have sort of stewarded these plans for Washington, that'll be gone. It'll be a free-for-all.
Philip Kennicott is culture critic for the Washington Post. Philip, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
And you are listening to Here and Now.
Hi, it's Steve Inskeep.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. You may have heard that prices for used vehicles are up. That car you've been thinking about donating to this station?
That car could be worth hundreds of dollars or even more in support.
If you don't need it, donate it. It's easy, it's free to you, and the proceeds help us bring you the news.
Learn more on this station's website.
Go to radioiq.org and click the support tab and select vehicle donation.
On the next Fresh Air, Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala Yousafzai on her life before and after she was shot by a Taliban gunman. Payback for standing up against the Taliban and advocating for her right and the right of all girls to go to school. She's serious about her ongoing advocacy, but has a delightful sense of humor. Join us.
Tune in for Fresh Air, Monday through Thursday at 2 on Radio IQ.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and from MathWorks, creator of MATLAB and Simulink software for technical computing and model-based design. MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery in engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com. And Loomis Sales, for 100 years committed to helping investors achieve their financial objectives, combining in-house research and risk management to create tailored investment strategies for every client. Learn more at loomissales.com.
It's Here and Now.
Athletes are crossing the finish line as the 130th running of the storied Boston Marathon continues today. The 26.2-mile course winds its way through 8 Massachusetts cities and towns before ending in downtown Boston. And that's where we find reporter Alex Ashlock. Alex has been covering the Boston Marathon for more than 20 years. Alex, welcome.
Thanks for having me, David.
So let's embark by talking about the professional runners. I mean, I presume a professional runner was the one who won on the men's side today. What happened?
That's definitely true, and it was an astonishing run by Kenyan John Career. He also won the Boston Marathon last year. He repeated as champion today, but he did it in course record fashion. And this is just an incredible time, David. If you know anything about marathoning, he finished the race in 2 hours, 1 minute and 52 seconds. He broke the course record by more than 2 minutes. And in fact, the top 3 men in this race today finished under the course record. And that record was set back in 2011. I've been covering the marathon, as you said, for a long time. I've never seen fast times like I saw here today in the men's race. He also, John Career, by the way, got an extra $50,000 bonus for setting the course record, in addition to his $150,000 first prize for winning for the second year in a row.
I mean, that's less than 90 seconds above, I think, the world record for the marathon. And Boston's a notoriously tough course, right?
Exactly. The world record, as you mentioned, is Kelvin Kiptum of Kenya. He set that in Chicago, 2 hours and 35 seconds. You know, the times in Boston are starting to approach that world record, which is really something, again, I didn't think I'd ever see.
Let's talk a little bit about what happened on the women's side. What happened today?
So Sharon Lokedi, another repeat champion. She's also from Kenya. She won the race last year in Boston in a course record time. She didn't quite do that today, but she did win fairly easy, easy. But she, for 2 straight years, she's won the Boston Marathon. There were a couple of Americans in the race today, and Jess McLean was the top American. And I should mention about the Americans, they also ran the fastest times by Americans in this Boston Marathon. Jess McLean ran the fastest time for a woman in the Boston Marathon. So again, just marathoning is just turned into sprinting, basically. The times are just incredible.
You might imagine wins at their backs, but actually sounds like a lot of dedication and focus. The Boston Marathon features, in fact, some of the world's elite runners as well as thousands of amateurs. It's also the oldest annual marathon. What is the significance of this race to the world of running?
Well, I think you mentioned at the top the course. The course is unique. It's up and down. It covers, towns and cities across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's a point-to-point course. It's not a loop course. As you said, it's the oldest marathon. You have to qualify to get into this marathon unless you're a charity runner. So it just makes it sort of the holy grail for marathon runners. It's something that marathon runners, if they want to run one marathon, it's Boston, and they work and they try to qualify. They have to run a qualifying time in another race, which is very hard to do. And it's so popular that the qualifying times keep getting faster. You actually have to run faster than your qualifying time to get into the Boston Marathon. So that just makes it incredibly unique in the world of major marathoning.
I will say, back when I was running marathons, I missed it only just by this much. I think it was only an hour that I think I failed to get it by. Let's briefly touch on some other races today at the marathon. The wheelchair races. How did the two divisions go?
The men's wheelchair race, again, the dominant racer in the world, Marcel Hug of Switzerland. He won the Boston Marathon for the 9th time and his 4th year in a row. He is the best wheelchair marathoner in the world. He'll be in London next weekend. He'll probably win that race as well. He might come back here next year and win number 10, which would tie him with South African Ernst van Dijk for the most victories in any of the Boston Marathon races. So Marcel Hug won that race. In the women's wheelchair race, Eden Rainbow Cooper of Great Britain, she won for the 2nd year. She won in 2024, and she won again today. Both of those racers basically dominated their competitors in the wheelchair races today to win $50,000 first prize for the men's and women's wheelchair racers.
And that's been going on for more than 50 years. So, Alex, we've got less than a minute yet left, but we've got you with one of these fancy Comrex machines right there by the finish line today. For the everyday runners, the amateurs completing this historic race, what is it like for them right now?
You know, I can see them from where I am right now. They've just finished. You know, there's dozens, hundreds of them who have crossed the finish line. They're smiling. Some of them are crying. They're raising their arms. They're also exhausted. But again, it's a lifelong dream for many of these people to run a marathon, let alone the Boston Marathon. It's just a real sense of accomplishment, and it's just something I love to do every year. It's just to stand and watch as people come across the line. I see someone with an American flag who just crossed.
And we are hearing our own reporter, Alex Ashlock, at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. Thanks so much, Alex.
You're welcome, David.
Here and Now is a production of NPR and WBUR. I'm David Folkenflik in New York.
I'm Scott Tong in Washington. It's Here and Now.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and from Olin College of Engineering. They believe human-centered designs make the most meaningful impact. At Olin, students learn to work in partnership with local communities with humility and empathy. olin.edu.
Radio IQ and WVTF Music are in the process of upgrading our digital donation systems. So the online donation form on our website and mobile app will be temporarily paused starting on April 1st. If you want to become a member or make a donation during this period, please call our business offices at 1-800-856-8900 and select option 1. Thank you for listening and supporting public radio across Virginia.
Support for Radio IQ is provided by Easy Mobility Solutions, helping you with whole home accessibility, platform and stair lifts, wheelchair ramps, and more. Rediscover your freedom. Information at easymmobilitysolutions.com.
You're listening to Radio IQ on WBTF Roanoke, WRIQ Charles City Richmond, WVTU Charlottesville, WVTW Charlottesville, WVTR Marion, WISE FM Wise, WQIQ Spotsylvania, WIUR Lexington, WEHC Emory, HD3 of WURV Richmond, and on 92.5 Richmond and 94.9 Fredericksburg. Radio IQ, a listener-supported community service of Virginia Tech, on your smart speaker and online at radioiq.org.
Fresh Air with Terry Gross is underwritten by the Davis H. Elliott Company, providing energy delivery services to...
Good afternoon and welcome to the 2 o'clock p.m. session of Roanoke City Council on Monday, April 20th, 2026. Council meetings are televised live and replayed on RV TV Channel 3 on Thursdays at 7 o'clock p.m. and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. They're also video streamed through YouTube Live at youtube.com/Roanoke VA. Council meetings are offered with closed captioning for the deaf or hard of hearing. This time I'll ask our clerk, Ms. McCoy, to please call the roll.
Sanchez-Jones. Here. Vice Mayor McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Nash.
Here.
Mr. Volleson.
Here.
Ms. Powers.
Here.
Mr. Hagan.
Here.
Mayor Cobb.
Here, and a quorum is present. I'm honored to welcome the Reverend Carter Mundy, pastor of Redemption Church, to offer our invocation this afternoon, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will lead. Would you please stand?
Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we come to you again today acknowledging that our greatest need isn't political or financial or even societal, but that it's spiritual. So thank you, God, for the gospel, that while we were far from you, you sent Jesus to bring us near. Thank you that through him we can find forgiveness and new life and real hope in the world. And we praise you not just as our creator, but as our savior today. And because of that hope, God, we come asking to help our city and to bless our city. Lord, we ask for wisdom for our city council and all who lead here, because we know that when the leaders get better, the city gets better. So give them clarity in the complex decisions that they face and integrity in every action that they take. And God, give them a genuine desire to serve the people that's been entrusted to them here in our city. Please unite them where there's division in such a divided culture and a divided time, and guide them toward what's good and right and just at all times, Father. And we pray for the needs of our city, the financial strain, the housing challenges, and the pressures that a lot of people are carrying today. Would you provide what's needed here, God? Give our leaders insight in how to steward the resources well for the good of our city so that we'll grow both in prosperity and in population here over time. And God, we also lift up our civil servants today, our police officers, our firefighters, our EMS, and all those who serve behind the scenes for us to protect us. God, would you please protect them and strengthen them and remind them that their work is really important and for the good of our city. And finally, God, we ask again for unity, not just an agreement, but really a shared commitment to seek the flourishing of our city together. God, give us unity in that with one another. Please bless Roanoke for your glory and our good. And we ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, it is good to see everyone this afternoon. Thank you for coming out for our 2:00 p.m. session. We began the day at 10 o'clock today. We earlier interviewed four finalists for two positions for the Roanoke City School Board trustees, and want to again express our appreciation to all 10 people who applied and the four finalists, and them giving them their time today for those additional interviews. Tonight during our 7:00 p.m. meeting, there will be a public hearing that we'll host to receive citizens' input on those four finalists. The Council of the City of Roanoke is seeking applications for various vacancies on council-appointed boards, authorities, commissions, and committees. To access the online application, you can visit the city's website at roanokeva.gov, or you can contact our clerk's office Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, or call, see if I can get this right, 540-853-2541. Thank you. We're going to move now into our presentations and acknowledgments. And as we do at our 2:00 meetings, this is an opportunity for council members to give shout outs about special things that we've been a part of or seen in between our last meeting and now. And so shake it up a little bit today and turn to my colleague on my left, Councilman Nash. Nothing like putting you on the spot.
No, it's not.
All right.
No. I was not actually able to make, I guess, let me reframe. This is more of a shout out to our city staff for our two community budget meetings. I've heard from citizens that I've met with both personally, one-on-one about the budget, but also who have reached out just, through email, that there was a great reception. They loved the activities. They loved how personal our staff was and how much time was taken out to discuss the budget matters with our citizens. And so I just want to really say thank you to our staff, our city manager, all of our folks in the finance department for all their continued hard work. And all this will be over soon, but then we'll have to get right back to it for FY28, right? So thank you all very much.
Thank you. I'm going to really shake it up now because I'm going to go to the vice mayor next.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I want to thank on Friday, I was able to join a meeting with the Friends of Washington Park and the Roanoke Valley Preservation Foundation and SERVE and Points of Diversity and some others to start thinking about the next steps as we work together to restore the Caretaker's Cottage in Washington Park. That was a really exciting meeting to be a part of. On Saturday, I did not get to go to the marathon and I did not get to go to Earth Day. So thanks to everyone who participated in that. I want to thank my neighbors. I spent all day gardening at my neighborhood park. So thanks to everyone who came out and shoveled mulch for 4 hours. It was a beautiful weekend. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Councilman Volleson.
I'd like to first shout out to all of the folks that came into Roanoke for the Blue Ridge Marathon. It was a great turnout. I was there on Saturday with the Roanoke Diversity Center doing one of the aid tents. And it's always great to see everybody. We're at the top of Peakwood, the big climb of Peakwood. And so it's fun to see folks like the mayor here, who did a great job doing his half marathon, coming up the top of that hill. It's the last heartbreak hill of the whole event. So it's really fun to be a part of that. And congratulations on your finishing that half marathon. I could not do that. I wouldn't even do the 5K, maybe the slow 5K. That might be my pace. But then I also wanted to just shout out the YMCA. Last night was at their 92nd father-son banquet. It was a great event all around at Hill Street Church. And the keynote speaker was Sheriff Antonio Hash. He did a great job. I think one of the most important parts was to remember that you have options. You always have options, and he doesn't want to see you in his jail.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sanchez Jones.
My shout out goes to the organizers of the Earth Day Festival. It was a nice turnout, and also to all the employees that worked during the festival, as well as the Blue Ridge Marathon. So thank you, guys.
Councilwoman Powers.
So I did have the opportunity to attend both of the public meetings on the budget, and it was very nice to see all the people that did come out and go around the different stations and understand, our situation right now. It was nice. I want to thank our city employees that were there to do that work. And I also want to do a shout out to, I've been working with a group where we work with the nursing homes around here. I'm actually working with helping a friend get into one, but I've really had my eyes opened, and I've didn't really understand the great need that these nursing homes need for clothing for people who actually get put in the nursing home who have no family. So I would just tell you, reach out to these nursing homes and see. So if you have clothing, like sweatpants and easy kind of shirts, they are in great need of things like that. So it's a big shout out to all the people that do that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hagan.
Yeah, so shout out to everybody or everything that's already been said. One of the other things, I had the opportunity to attend a community meeting that was held by the police department, where they heard citizens' concerns, questions, comments, all that type of stuff. And so shout out to them for having those, because I don't recall those happening before Chief Booth. I could be wrong, but so shout out to them.
Thank you. So I had the opportunity to help cut the ribbon on the new LEAP West End Market Pavilion. And this is an extension of the $2 million investment that the city made through ARPA funds to not only completely renovate the new LEAP headquarters, but to add this West End Market Pavilion, which is absolutely beautiful. And to think about the growth that's occurred just since 2009 related to food access throughout our city. LEAP is a big part of that and a leader in that effort. So I want to give a shout out to them. And I also want to give a shout out to the organizers for the Blue Ridge Marathon. It's one thing to cheer people on. It's another thing to be cheered on as you're going through. And a lot of people talk about, so I did the half marathon. It's the first half marathon I've ever done. I finished it, and for me, that's a victory. Because I really observed so many people participating, and everyone did it at their own pace, which I think is important. When people needed to rest, they rested. When they needed to run faster, they did. But all the runners, all the walkers, everyone encouraged each other along the way. To all of the cheering stations along the way, you alluded to that earlier, Peter, to the various types of beverages that were offered to runners along the way. That was pretty cool too. But I will say this, having done this, everybody talks about the mountains. But I'm here to tell you that Roanoke is not a flat landscape. And you can run Mill Mountain, you can run Roanoke Mountain, you can run Peakwood, but you have to remember the hills in between, and especially where they're located. As I was finishing up, I was coming down Peakwood, down the hill, running slowly, loving it. We turned right, and I thought, okay, we're going to go to Jefferson and turn left, and I'm on my way home. Well, unbeknownst to me, because I didn't look that closely at the map, it wasn't a left turn, it was a right turn. And guess which direction it went? Uphill. So, and then actually getting on Jefferson, there's just a tiny little bridge right at Carillion. And then there's another little tiny bridge after that. Anyway, all of it being said, it was a remarkable experience. I would do it again because it was such a great experience. I'm not making a promise today, but I'm just saying that I would. But I want to thank everyone who participated, and particularly Foot Levelers for sponsoring it, Roanoke Outside, our Parks and Rec, everyone who is involved, all the volunteers. Well done. All right, we have a couple of proclamations today, and I'm going to go down to the podium. And first, I'd like to invite Gwendolyn Coleman, Director of Human Services, and also the Executive Director of Children's Trust, to join me at the podium. This first proclamation is acknowledging April as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas Child Abuse Prevention Month is observed each April to raise awareness to the social issue of child abuse and/or neglect, and to affirm our community's shared responsibility to support children and families. Whereas child abuse and neglect remain serious public health and social concerns affecting children and families across our city, valley, and state. Whereas prevention and early intervention efforts, including education, family support, and community engagement, help strengthen protective factors for children and caregivers. Whereas the City of Roanoke is dedicated to preventing childhood trauma and supporting families through collaborative partnerships. Whereas in the City of Roanoke alone, 1,254 reports of child abuse and neglect were opened, and 88 children entered foster care during the fiscal year of 2025, and currently 257 children are in foster care, highlighting the ongoing need to ensure every child's safety and well-being in our community. Whereas the Children's Trust has served more than 1,835 children in the Roanoke City Public Schools, as part of the Speak Up and Be Safe, Healthy Families serve 26 children, CASA, which stands for Court Appointed Services Advocate, served 98 children with a family case in the City of Roanoke Juvenile and Domestic Relations Courts. The Children's Advocacy Center served 140 children and caregivers in fiscal year 2025. Whereas collaborative partnerships among the Department of Human Social Services, Children's Trust, Commonwealth's Attorney Office, Roanoke City Police Department, Carillion Clinic, and Family Service of Roanoke Valley serve as our community's coordinated response to child abuse and neglect. Whereas families, schools, community organizations, faith-based groups, and human service agencies provide our citizens with programs and services ensuring the resilience of our community. Whereas through education, advocacy, collaboration, and active community awareness, the trauma of child abuse is preventable, and we can create a future in which every child grows up in a safe, stable, and nurturing environment. Now, therefore, I, Joseph L. Cobb, Mayor of the City of Roanoke, urge all residents, community agencies, faith groups, and businesses to renew our commitment to protecting children, strengthening families, and protecting children and promoting resilience, healing, and well-being across our country, and do hereby proclaim April 2026 throughout this great 8-time All-America city as Child Abuse Prevention Month. Thank you all for the work that you do.
Good afternoon, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, and members of City Council. I just want to take the opportunity to thank you all for giving us the time to celebrate Child Abuse Prevention Month with you all. As you can see, it's a collaborative effort between the Department of Human and Social Services and Children's Trust, where we try to meet the needs of our families that we serve in preventing child abuse. Preventing child abuse. This month we celebrated with several activities throughout the month. Some of those activities were Wear Blue Day, Wear Jersey Day, Wearing Sneaker Day, and also we're going to end the month with an ice cream social on Friday. So, thank you.
At least introduce yourself so we know who you are.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Hannum, and for the last month, I have been the interim executive director at Children's Trust. And we could not do the work that we do without all of the collaborations that we have. So thank you for giving us this time here today. It means a lot.
Hello, my name is Jeanette Craighead. I'm the Director of Prevention at Children's Trust. I cover healthy families, CASA, and Children First.
Thank you. Before we take a photograph, council members, would any of you like to share any comments with our guests?
Just like to say thank you for what you do. I know it's a hard job, and we just appreciate everything that you do for our kids.
Anybody else? All right, let's come up here.
Looks good. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
I wished I was about 20 years younger. I took some kids. I'm too old now.
All right, next I'd like to invite Cindy McFall and our tree team. Vice Mayor McGuire, would you come join me?
Oh.
He threw out that word mulch. And I know our trees need it too.
Yes.
Right? But I know Vice Mayor McGuire is a big advocate for our tree canopy, as is all of council. So come on over. Yeah, get over here. We're all big, happy family here. And Cindy, I'm going to let you introduce or have them introduce themselves, okay? Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be established for the planting of trees. Whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in the state of Nebraska, and is now observed throughout the nation and the world. Whereas trees can reduce the erosion of precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. Whereas trees are a renewable resource, providing paper, wood for homes, fuel for fires, and countless other wood products. Trees increase city property values, enhance economic vitality of business areas, and beautify the community. Trees are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And whereas the city of Roanoke continues to be recognized as a Tree City USA community, demonstrating its ongoing commitment to responsible urban forestry, environmental stewardship, and the expansion and preservation of its tree canopy for the benefit of all residents. Now, therefore, I, Joseph L. Cobb, Mayor of the City of Roanoke, urge that all citizens support efforts to care for trees and woodlands and the city's community forestry program, and do hereby proclaim Friday, April 24th, 2026 throughout this great 8-time All-America city as Arbor Day. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor Cobb.
Thank you, Vice Mayor McGuire, members of City Council, City Manager Turner. We just thank you for your support for Arbor Day and for our community's trees. Trees do more than beautify our city. They provide shade, improve air quality, help maintain and expand our tree canopy, and play an important role in reducing the urban heat island effect. The trees we care for today are an investment in our future, benefiting the generations to come. I would like to say a special thank you to the people behind me because they're the ones that make all the magic happen. All of our tree stewards are here with us and our urban forestry crews, and I would like for each of them to come introduce themselves. And again, thank you very much. Bill?
Hello, I'm Bill West. I am your urban forestry coordinator, and I have the privilege and honor of serving the citizens of Roanoke since 2017 as your urban forester and managing approximately 15 to 18,000 trees and about 12,000 acres of forest remnant that contribute to the quality of life here in the city of Roanoke. And I could not do it without some of the people standing here, including Sam Matson, if you come up, Samantha, who's getting married next week.
Hello. Thanks, Bill. I'm Sam Matson. I'm the urban forestry supervisor with our urban forestry staff. So I'm doing all the tree and health risk assessments. And Bill is an amazing supervisor and boss. I couldn't be here without him. And and of course we have our tree stewards here as well, who I'm so happy and proud to be standing beside them. We have our Arbor Day planting this Friday if any of you guys want to come plant in Wasina Park. So there you go. Thank you.
I'm Jim Pickens. I'm a tree steward and also serving as president of Trees Roanoke, our 501c3. We raise money for buying trees. We're getting ready to plant probably anywhere from 80 to 100 trees in the city this summer, or this fall, I'm sorry. And we work with community groups to plant trees in different neighborhoods around the city. We're hoping to expand that.
I'm Bob Hilton Smith. I'm not getting married next week. Well, I don't think so anyway, not to my knowledge. I'm actually currently the president of the Tree Stewards. We're the volunteer group that works on maintaining and planting trees. Jim mentioned that he was the president of the Trees Roanoke. That's a nonprofit that raises money. We're really intertwined and work together. So thank you.
I'm Harry Van Gilder. I've had the privilege of being a tree steward since 2009 in the inaugural class that was offered, along with my wife also took that class. So I've had the privilege of pruning many trees and planting many trees and look forward to continuing to do it in the future.
I'm going to add quickly that Harry and his wife really started the Tree Stewards.
Please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. I'm Laura Riley. I'm the parks manager, and I have the privilege of working with all of the people that you see here. They're a very passionate group of people who make our community better. So by extension, they make me better. And so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Council members? Mr. Volleson?
Of course, I want to thank everybody for what they do to make Roanoke a greener and more sustainable place. And obviously, it helps with the flood reduction as well. So great things come from the trees that you guys plant and you tend to. And as a gardener myself, I have learned a lot about how much care it takes to get those trees to where they are growing on their own. And so I really appreciate, now have an appreciation myself for what you guys do. So thank you again for everything you do to make the city wonderful.
Thank you, too. It reminds me, I went all around my yard over the weekend. We had tons of acorns that fell. I have a lot of trees, and I pulled them up and stuck them in little baggies. And then I got up this morning and thought, oh, no, it's going to frost tonight, so I guess I better pull those in. So, but thank you for what you do. I hope I can keep my trees alive.
Well, I also know we have a commemorative tree program, and the information about that is online. If you have a loved one or a friend or someone special that you want to dedicate a tree to, the nice thing is the city, part of that investment is the city cares for that tree and helps pick out a native tree. And I think all of us are aware of the Planning for Peace program that the Gun Violence Prevention Commission started. We've planted, I don't know, 14, 15 trees in 3 different parks, I think, to help especially remember people whose cases have not been closed. In other words, they're cold cases, but it's provides a place of peace and a growing beautiful tree for that family to remember their loved one by. So there are lots of opportunities to be involved in the tree planting in the life of the city. So why don't we come up and get a picture together?
You'd scoot in just a little. That looks good. Thank you.
Stuck the dirt in there. That's stuck in the wall.
Next, I want to call on our city manager for a very special recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of City Council. I'd like to call up Ellen Stick, please. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, I would like to recognize Ellen Stick, a library community service assistant who was recently honored for her innovative program, the Roanoke Valley Think Tank. This initiative received the 2026 Virginia Public Library Directors Association Award for unique outreach and engagement effort. This award highlights the Roanoke Public Library's leadership in establishing and facilitating the Roanoke Valley Think Tank, held monthly at the Williamson Road Branch Library. The think tank brings together more than 15 organizations, including multiple city departments, community partners, and local employers. Through these collaborative meetings, participants address pressing employment challenges, share success stories, and coordinate community events. This collective effort has enabled the library to offer individualized appointments, expand career programming, and host job fairs, ultimately serving and supporting more than 600 patrons to date. Please join me in celebrating Ellen Stick.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate this honor and Amber's efforts to make this come to be. It has been a privilege to work with the 15 organizations and the number of folks who have benefited from the collaboration that occurs because of the think tank. And I look forward to many more success stories. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all. It was an honor to receive this award. This award was voted on by other library directors across the state. So it's a big honor for us to receive this and for Ellen to be recognized for the efforts and her ideas and the connectivity that she has with the community and everybody that comes into the Williamson Road Library and also the Melrose Library that she also served at for years. So thank you again for this recognition.
Congratulations, Ellen. I think I spy some of your family here today. Would you like to introduce them?
This is my husband, Greg Stick, and my daughter, Emily Kate Copenhaver.
Well, it's great to have you all here. I'm so glad you could be here to celebrate this moment. Ellen, I personally am grateful to the way you think, and it's always focused on outreach and connecting people. I first met you, I think, unless I'm not remembering something way back, which it could be. Ellen helped found Friends of Old Lick Cemetery, and has worked for numerous years to restore the cemetery and lead that effort and just bring people together. And that's what you do so well. So I'm so pleased that you and the libraries have received this recognition. Other council members?
Just thank you very much for your efforts.
And I just want to say thank you so much for what you do and all the passion that you put into it, especially when you're trying to help people with their resumes for a job and a job interview. So thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a big difference. Do y'all want to come up? We'll get a picture.
Good. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Well, congratulations, Ellen. Moving on in our agenda, we come now to the hearing of citizens upon public matters, and this is a time that council sets aside as a priority for citizens to be heard. All matters will be referred to the city manager for response, recommendation, or report back to council as she may deem appropriate. If you're signed up to speak today, when you come forward to the podium, the mic is live. You'll see a little box in the corner. Green light means go, yellow light means you have a minute left, and red means stop. Each speaker will have 3 minutes, and I'll ask our clerk to call 2 speakers at a time. So the first speaker will come up and the second will be ready to follow. Madam Clerk, do we have speakers signed up to share today?
We do. We have 9 speakers.
Okay, thank you.
The first 2, Albert Mack and Megan Peterson.
Oh, we have to go in order?
Yeah, Mr. Mack, welcome. We're glad you're here.
I live in Old Southwest, and I'm concerned about the traffic of homeless people and the vandalism that's being caused. Since I've signed up for this meeting, there have been 2 houses that have been broken into, and it's become a real concern. Some of the people that go through our neighborhoods don't appreciate things that we have on our house. I've been targeted by some folks, and I just think there's something that needs to be done other than what I want to do to people, which probably would end up getting me put in jail. I understand that people have substance abuse issues and mental health issues, but I'm here to tell you because I've been in the substance abuse field since 1978, and I just retired from the federal government in October. There are a lot of people that walk around these streets and act like they have issues, but their issues are not substance abuse. Their issues are intimidation. And I think that's a dangerous thing, especially when community members approach them about breaking into places, and they approach a community member or a person that owns a house and goes, "What business of it is yours?" in a threatening manner. I had a person target my house like 4 or 5 times with slander and just hate speech until I confronted him face to face because I can do that. I used to work in a medium security prison doing drug counseling, so and I did homeless outreach for the VA. So I understand, what people are going through, but I think some of the people that we have in our community just uses as an excuse to intimidate the residents in certain areas. So that is my main concern. Just, when was it, 2 days ago, 2 more houses in my neighborhood. I live on Day Avenue at 531. There's a halfway house that was broken into by homeless folks. I don't know how long that they were in there, but I don't know how much damage they did, but it's just an ongoing thing. And I hope something can be done about it before someone gets hurt, either a resident or a person that attacks a resident, because, you know, I have people shoot stuff on at my front door. And like I said, they've made some hate speech and I really don't appreciate it. I'm originally from New York City. I can handle myself. I'm the youngest of 7 boys, but I don't want to go there with these people. But I will defend my, you know, myself and my property. And it's gotten to the point where that is kind of the situation. So I just want help, and I just hope somebody can listen. And, you know, we have kids that there's a school bus stop. We have kids that walk up and down that street, and they shouldn't be accosted. Neither should elderly people. So
Thank you,
that's
Mr.
my-
Mack. Thank you for bringing
Thank
that
you.
to our attention. Ms. Peterson?
Hi.
Welcome.
Yeah, my name is Megan Lyle Peterson. And I just heard about this morning, so I didn't have a ton of time to prepare, so it's a little all over the place, but I'll do my best. But we heard about the, I guess, approval of the Flock Raven, separate thing than, I guess, Flock trial for adding 75 audio devices, and I think 80% of those are going to be in the Northwest division of Roanoke. A lot of us attended that public forum from the police, like it was last week on the 14th, where we had, you know, confirmed like there was like about 28 of those Flock cameras. So I'm just gonna ask you guys to like strongly consider like what we're doing here. You know, these devices, there's, you know, tons of social media videos of people who, you know, in their community, they have these new trial devices. And because it is sort of like more of like a predictive system, we're using AI, which has a lot of errors. There ends up being arrests that are made, or at least not arrests, but like someone gets pulled over because they think that the license plate has a 0, but it's actually an O, right? So the software was like, oh, this is a stolen license plate. This is the one you're looking for, right? And then, you know, a grandma and their 3-year-old or granddaughter get pulled over, or they're going to the doctor's office, and the cop is being told that it's a stolen license plate, but it's not. And so I think that we really do need to consider that these, you know, softwares are not perfect, and that there is actually a high error rate. And that is costly to the community, whether that's through lawsuits or even just like the morale of like trusting policing when we already have like systemic issues of that in our community. I know another case that I read about online today was, I don't remember where it's from, but you know, it was a young Black man, right, who got pulled over. His car license plate had whatever different, like slightly different, I think it was a 2, and the software was looking for a 7, but it flagged it as a 7. And so that's something that does happen a lot. And we also even had in Martinsville a case where it was saying that there was 28 gunshots were fired, only 8 were detected, right? So even then it wasn't perfect when it was a gunshot. And so, you know, this is a private company, and they don't really show you how their model works a lot of the time, right? Because they don't have that same public accountability like a public company would. And as well, they also have, because they have these things that are wrong, they actually don't even really have a lot of transparency when they have like wrong issues in their model that they need to fix. And so I think that our community does deserve that you guys take this seriously and consider if there are any alternatives, or waiting until they fix a lot of these errors before adopting it, which I would say not to not do, but if you're gonna choose some sort of middle road, that would be an option. I think that we just really don't need any more reasons to distrust policing our community. And I think that you know, because of those errors and mistakes, we just don't want Roanoke in the news for all of these incidences where they pull someone over because their license plate software or their, you know, audio, whatever, told them that there was something happening in the community that actually wasn't, getting people all worked up, and also, you know, putting your officers at risk. If someone goes to their door and they're like, hey, there's a gunshot here, and their guy's like, no, but there's somebody who's like, get off my property, that could easily escalate. And so I think that it just hurts everybody in that case.
Thank you very much. Please sit down, ma'am. Ma'am, please sit down. Please. Yeah, please sit down. We're going to take each person in turn. Please sit down, or I'll have to have you removed. Next 2 speakers, please.
Scott Duvall and Sharon Fritz.
Can I ask you all to please be quiet? Please be quiet in the chambers, or I will have you removed. Thank you. Mr. Duvall, welcome.
Thank you. I also wanted to speak, sharing concerns about the Flock cameras. The former speaker did an excellent job, but I just want to add in some additional things I want to make sure you're all aware of. Norfolk is tied up in a major lawsuit about the constitutionality of flock cameras. Obviously, it's great when a system works perfectly and in an ideal world. Unfortunately, this is a tool set that isn't always used perfectly. There are cases of wrongful arrests, profiling, and officers stalking ex-partners using the data available. It is a huge safety issue for community members. And with the addition of audio devices to the flock cameras, they'll say that it's for detecting signs of distress so that police can come out and see what's going on if people are yelling at each other. It's about to be summertime. I live on a busy street with lots of kids who like to run outside and scream because that's what kids are supposed to do. And I don't think we need an AI-based system sending the cops after screaming children. So please take it very seriously. And if there's anything that we can do to not have more of these cameras in our neighborhoods, the better. And a final case that was especially concerning, there was a woman in Texas who was tracked down via thousands of cameras after she got an abortion. Police officers used this camera system, this database, to hunt her down, track down all of her movements, track down her vehicle, and nobody should be subject to that kind of surveillance. Obviously, cameras can make us feel safer, but privacy is an important right that we all have. And if anyone wants to say that, oh, well, if we've done nothing wrong, we have nothing to hide, I'd remind you that you have blinds on your windows at home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duvall. Welcome, Ms. Fritz.
Hello. Hi. All right, we're the bus riders of Roanoke, and we are in budget season. So we are asking and reminding people that good public transit helps the economy and lifts people out of poverty by giving them a way to get to work consistently. It's a good investment to have buses, even in a city that is low on funds. I urge you to include funding for Valley Metro and city services for replacing the worst sidewalks and doing snow removal from sidewalks and streets so that pedestrians can access bus stops instead of standing out in traffic to flag down the bus during a large snow event, which happens every year. If they stand behind the snow pile, they can't access the street or the bus stop. We would like y'all to include funding to increase pay and insurance coverage for the bus drivers so that the job is attractive to new drivers, which we need new drivers, and we are in a shortage, which is why they are doing so much overtime. So you can find the Bus Riders of Roanoke on Facebook, and also our monthly meeting is the first Thursday of the month at Gainsborough Library at 5:30 p.m. So at this time, we have just concluded our annual Ugliest Bus Stop competition, and that is the poster that Sylvia has. And this is actually wonderful, and we are so happy. We love all of our bus stops, and so this brings attention to the ones that really need help. And so the one that won this year is on the 52 bus stop, Ogden southbound at Leslie, and I would like everyone who can hear me to join us at that stop, Ogden southbound at Leslie, the 52 bus stop, this Saturday, April 25th at 5:15 p.m. And we will be there enjoying fellowship and picking up trash, making the stop look better. And bus stops generate pedestrians, so they should be priority areas for fixing the sidewalks and snow removal. Isn't that a nice poster? Yeah, we really hope that Ogden southbound at Leslie, which has a partial sidewalk but no curb cuts and no wheelchair accessibility, we know that y'all have been really faithful in the past to look at these issues. That is this one right here. But you know what? You're going to see it really well this Saturday at 5:15 when we're there. Please join us.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, our next two speakers, please.
Monique Bishop and Barbara Dirk.
Good afternoon, Mayor.
Welcome, Ms. Bishop.
Council.
To add, I'm also a part of the Bus Riders of Roanoke advocacy group, and to add, we want the city to increase funding to improve the bus stops and improve infrastructure such as sidewalks. Especially one particular that comes to mind is in the Villa Heights neighborhood. A lot of pedestrians ride the bus in that area, and there are no sidewalks, so they're playing in traffic, and it's very dangerous conditions. And so we want the city to look at bus stops and make sure that they're adequate and safe for the people who use them every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Ms. Dirk.
Good afternoon, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, City Council members, City Manager, all of you. I am Barbara Dirk. I'm a resident of Roanoke, and I am here today to give you an invitation, a footprint. And so I'm going to pass these to. And you all are invited too. So I have some more at my seat for the people in the audience, and anyone that's watching on television is also invited. The cutoff date, though, is this Friday, April the 24th. What am I talking about? I am talking about the 5th annual Love Thy Neighbor Walk. This is put on by Church Women United. Church Women United was started in 1941. The Roanoke chapter began in 1943, and we have one imperative in that we be integrated. So since 1943, Church Women United, that's 41 different congregations in the city of Roanoke and 13 different denominations, have been meeting together to worship God and do good things in His honor. We are, this being our 5th one, the first walk was in downtown Roanoke with Gainsborough Baptist, and Mayor Cobb was with the Gun Violence Committee at that point in time, and you were asked to come and be with us and walk to talk about gun violence. And so Mayor Cobb was at the first one at Gainsborough Baptist. The second one was based at Loudon Avenue Christian. Then we were over on 10th Street. Last year we were on Grandin Road, and this year we're going to be on Williamson Road, which is Miss Sanchez Jones' neighborhood. And she's already been invited and told me that she's going to be out of town that year. But please pass it on. Please, everyone is invited. If you're under 18, you need to have a parental permit, but we need to know that you're coming, and it's free. So it starts on Saturday, May the 2nd, 9:30 is registration, 10 o'clock a walk begins, and if you, when you're register, you're invited to a Zoom meeting to tell you how to pray and how to prayer walk, that we're asking God to reveal His presence in the Roanoke Valley, something I think we all can get behind and say that's a good thing. See you on May the 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Next two speakers
will be Frida Cathcart, Justin White.
I'm going to ask City Council to forgive me for the way I look. It's been a very, very busy time, and I usually dress more respectfully when I address you, but I didn't have time to go home and change, so here I am. First of all, I want to thank you all for allocating money to help with the house renovation in Washington Park. I think that can hold the key to an important future for Northwest Roanoke. I've been talking with some different civic leaders in Northwest Roanoke about the potential for that community and the challenges that we've had for decades now in Roanoke City. You know, Roanoke City is actually in a book called Root Shock because of the urban renewal. But there's 3 other sections of that book. There's one where there was a city that had root shock because of a natural disaster, and another one that had is in the book because of losing industry. Roanoke has experienced all 3 of those tragedies here, from urban renewal to the flood of '85 to the Visco plant. So when this happens and there's a root shock in a culture, you lose the unity, the community that was there, that was the glue that kept things going, that had the small businesses, the economic prosperity was gutted from Roanoke 3 different times. And I've been thinking about where we are now and the struggles that the city is having financially. And I think the best way to address that is to create a way to bring people together and to problem solve. I actually created a guide based on over 30 years of grassroots organizing experience. It's on the web. The tools are there. It's called the Common Sense Coalition Guide, and it's .org. But especially with Roanoke City and Washington Park, I think if we brought together civic leaders from Northwest to come together and talk about putting together an economic development package that the city could market to attract people to come to Roanoke for Black history and Black culture. And that Washington Park and that house could be the gateway for that, for them to come here. Think about the richness of our history and culture and the resilience in Roanoke. We have Lucy Addison, we have the Harrison Museum, we have the Dumas, we have the Martin Luther King statue, Henrietta Lacks. People will travel to some place for their history, and we've got a diversity of things, the arts, the music, sports, get outside. What about our history? And this will help with the entrepreneurs, the Black restaurants, the businesses, because that's what happened with urban renewal. Roanoke gutted that. We can help bring it back and support it. So this is a suggestion that I've been floating out there, and it's gotten really positive response. And I think it would be really important for the city to help with that initiative and help support that and create opportunities for that to happen. So thank you for this opportunity. And again, please forgive my appearance.
Thank you, Ms. Cathcart. Mr. White, welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Much like the previous speaker, I also apologize for my appearance. I have no excuse. I'm just always disheveled. My name is Justin White, and I work for a small cybersecurity boutique called Stratum Security as an ethical hacker. And it was brought to my attention that the flock cameras are not secure. They are internet connected, and it is possible for anyone with internet access and a little know-how to access them, including their live feed and their stored recordings. This was brought to my attention initially by a YouTuber who I follow by the name of Ben Jordan. Ben is a musician, not a hacker. He does not have the 6 years of education in computer science that I do, or the 18 years of experience. Yet he was able to breach their security and gain full access. And he's a musician with no special relevant training or education. Even more egregious, when he presented Flock with his findings, they plugged their ears and claimed that his findings were lies. However, myself and countless others have confirmed his findings in our own security audits. To my knowledge, they still have not been remediated, and I have no reason to think the cameras in Roanoke are not also affected by the same issues. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There are already documented cases across the country of people hacking into the cameras and using them to stalk their spouses, former spouses, and children. Flock needs to overhaul their security practice before we ever consider welcoming them into our city any more than they already unfortunately are. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The last speaker will be Jaron Maniel.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Thank you for letting me speak here today. I'm asking you to vote no on item 7C, the encroachment permit for 75 Flock Raven audio detection devices. My argument rests on 4 points. It does not work. Our neighbor just proved that. It is not what the department says it is, and Flock as a company has a documented track record of abuse. First, the technology does not work. Chicago's Office of Inspector General audited over 50,000 acoustic gunshot devices. Only 9.1% produced evidence of any gun-related crime. New York City's comptroller found an 87% failure rate. Chicago, Atlanta, Portland, Durham, Dayton, and San Antonio have all dropped their systems. Second, Martinsville just ran this exact experiment on Raven, the same product, with the same company Flock. 140 sensors, and $80,000 price tag. Martinville's police chief Chad Reynolds Rhodes told WSLS on record that in one incident, Ring doorbell cameras captured 28 shots fired and Raven picked up 8. He described shootings inside homes that Raven missed entirely. Martinsville is dismantling their system right now, finishing by the end of 2026, the same moment ours would go live. Roanoke project manager Ayer Mayo's response was essentially, Martinsville is smaller. That is not a technical rebuttal, that is a sales pitch. Third, read our staff report carefully. This is not just gunshot detection. The triggering events listed include repetitive distress cries for help. These are microphones that listen for human voices. In October, Flock marketed Raven with an alert screen that literally said screaming. After public backlash, they quietly changed it to distress. But capability remains. The Electronic Frontier Foundation is urging cities to cancel Flock contracts before this feature causes civil liberties harm. And there is an active federal lawsuit in Norfolk right now, challenging Flock on Fourth Amendment grounds. A federal judge has already refused to dismiss it. Fourth, and this is the one I want you to sit with, Flock has repeatedly lost control of its own data. In 2025, investigative reports revealed San Francisco Flock safety system was searched 1.6 million times by out-of-state agencies in violation of state law. A Texas sheriff's deputy ran a nationwide Flock search with the reason listed as had an abortion, search for female, querying networks in states where abortion is legal. Customs and Border Patrol accessed Flock data from 10 Washington police departments that never authorized federal sharing through what Flock later called an undisclosed pilot program. So let that sink in. To summarize, the technology fails roughly 90% of the time. The city 50 miles south is dismantling it as we speak. The product listens for human voices in ways Flock tries to hide, and the company has repeatedly failed to control who accesses the data. Martinsville spent $80,000 to learn this lesson. We can learn it for free tonight by voting no. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And all the speakers, thank you. All right, next we're going to move to our consent agenda. And all matters listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine by members of council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of the items. If discussion is desired, an item can be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. The consent agenda includes 4 requests for closed meetings from the city attorney's office, and there is one walk-on request, which I need to add as an amendment to the consent agenda, and that is a request for a closed meeting to discuss certain authorities, boards, commissions, and committees appointed by council pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 Code of Virginia as amended. So if I could have a second to the amended motion for the consent agenda.
Move the amended motion.
All right, do a second. Thank you, council members Volleson and Powers. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones, Vice Mayor McGuire.
Aye.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Ms. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye. And do I need to do a second motion?
I think you just amended the consent agenda, so now you want to vote to approve the
Okay,
consent
thank you.
agenda. Yes.
So the motion to amend has been approved. Now I need a motion and second to approve the consent agenda as a whole, as amended. Thank you, Councilmember Hagan and Nash. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones, Vice Mayor McGuire.
Aye.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Ms. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the consent agenda as amended is approved. Thank you. Moving on to our regular agenda, we have no public hearings or petitions and communications, so we'll move into our reports of city officers and the city manager. And we have a briefing, and I'll turn to our city manager, Ms. Turner, to introduce that briefing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council, I would like to welcome Brad Stevens, who serves as a graduate research assistant and adjunct professor with Virginia Tech. Mr. Stevens will be presenting on Grant Ready Roanoke and Engagement Ready Roanoke update.
Welcome, Mr. Stevens. Is it doctor yet?
Not yet.
All right, welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, members of City Council, Ms. Turner, thank you for having us today. Again, my name is Brad Stevens. A pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. I'm with the Virginia Tech Institute for Policy and Governance. I have one of my colleagues, Bob, back here with me, but there's 6 more of us that are involved in this team as well. We at the Institute do praxis work where we're looking at both research and practice together in these spaces and how to create better communities, better places all around the world. I want to give a shout out before we begin here to our colleagues and support here, Helen and Molly, who have been our right hands throughout this project, and we're really grateful, and they've been incredibly supportive throughout. So Engagement Ready Roanoke, broadly speaking here, is a 2-part project with the idea that we are facing challenges as a city, as every city is, that cannot be addressed by one sector alone. City government cannot solve all of our problems. Nonprofits cannot do it. Businesses cannot do it. It requires us to seek solutions that allow us to cross all those boundaries with a bunch of different people working together in this space. So this project is aimed at 2 of those, with the recognition that that space is much broader than this. But we have approaching both nonprofit capacity. So how do community members get together? How do they work after goals by themselves? And on the flip side, how do we have city capacity increase to be able to work with those nonprofits, to be able to work with others in these spaces? So this kind of dual-pronged approach of capacity building is at the heart of Engagement Ready Roanoke. Our approach to this is somewhat different than you might have heard from other consultants in these spaces, in terms of we did not come in with answers or special knowledge in these places. We have access to a bunch of all of that information, but we don't come in with a solution. We come in with trying to build this imaginative capacity. There's no city in the country that would tell you that they've figured out how to engage with the public well. There's no city that would tell you that their nonprofits are thriving the way that they hope that they would be. So we're operating in this space where there's a lot of information to pull from. We're trying to build imaginative capacity, help people think through alternatives, think through what this could be in these spaces, not just assume that engagement has to look like X, Y, or Z, but how do we think about what it can be broadly? So we're trying to create and hold space for that. The first part of what's been done here at this point, starting from May through October of last year, is a 6-month nonprofit capacity building program in which we work with 10 organizations. We met with them monthly during that time. We had 2 cohort meetings every month, and in every month we also met individually with each one of those 10 organizations. They would meet with 2 consultants, each of those meetings, myself and others. And each of those organizations, we were trying to help them get through where they are to where they want to be. If you look at these organizations that participate, I'm sure many of them will be familiar to you all here. And you'll notice that what's going to work for the Bridge is not necessarily the same things that are going to work for Fed Up. The Bus Riders Advocacy Group, which we heard from earlier, they do not need the same things that Historic Gainsborough needs as a nonprofit in these spaces. If we try to make House of Bread look like the Hope Center, neither one of those organizations would flourish in that space. So it's really about meeting them and helping them get where they want to be. And we're pleased to share at this point that 9 of the 10 participants finished the program with us. The other one had some unforeseen difficulties, but the others all finished. 7 of those participating organizations, and we take this as a sign of trust and support, is that 7 of those organizations invited us to meet their entire boards and lead trainings or facilitate other conversations with their entire boards in these spaces. And we did questionnaires at the end of every month. Each month was focused on a different topical area. So financial reports in one month, fundraising in another month, storytelling in another month. And each of those months, all of the questions that we asked afterwards, people reported having, at least a majority reported having a better understanding of the content and a better ability to take that into action at the end of the day. So just to give a few examples of what happened in this space, we have Fed Up, the gun violence organization. They were able to update their bylaws. They developed a new board structure that includes committees in these spaces. I want to note, as we go through these organizations are doing all this work. We're walking beside them, holding their hand as we can, but they are doing the hard work to do these things. This all requires behavior change on their part. The Bridge and House of Bread, along with Fed Up, they're exploring collaborative opportunities. This is really exciting for us to see our participating organizations start to work with each other in this space. We had Old Southwest updating their financial procedures. They had a process where no one could understand the documents they were getting, and so they started working through how can we help our board understand where we are financially at any given time. We have House of Bread, who had been through kind of a lull in their board, kind of revitalized the board, have some difficult conversations that allowed them to move forward. And as a result of that, they've now also mobilized some more grant information, or some more grant funds. It's one of my best favorite stories from the whole project. Is one of the women from House of Bread told me that we never told them actually how to write a grant application, but when they wrote a grant application, they're like, oh man, this is way better than it was last year. And they were immediately rewarded with $8,000 to $9,000 in funding from that grant that they put in after that. We also are very grateful to say that Historic Gainsborough, we helped them achieve and be approved for their 501c3 status as part of this. But on the flip side, I also want to note, we also had a participant, Rooted Kitchen Collective, who have taken over what used to be Leap's Community Kitchen. And they, through some deliberative processes with us walking through them, decided not to become a nonprofit during this process, which we take as just as much of a victory as those that did, in the sense that they made a thoughtful process to move forward in these conversations. We found throughout this that one-on-one time was essential in these organizations. We got to know them. The reason that 7 of them invited us to their board is because they trusted us to be in those spaces with them and recognized that there was something that we could work on together in those spaces. We also found in this that organizational change often requires uncomfortable behavioral change, that there's a lot of organizations that want to be different, but they don't want to change how they operate. And so we had to navigate this very complex milieu of how do you get an organization that believes so passionately in what they do to help them change to become what they want to be moving forward. We also came to understand, which will be no surprise to you all, that leadership and governance are a recurring theme. We did not intend to touch on leadership when this process started, and by the end of the time, it became such a big theme that we felt we had to touch on in the final session and kind of give some conversation space to that topic. Moving forward, we continue to offer assistance as requested by these organizations. We're convening as we can meetings with them, asking them what they would like to do moving forward while also being there. Unfortunately, one of them has invited me to be on their board, so they now have to deal with me all of the time moving forward, but that's their loss, I suppose, in this space. So that's that. As we move forward now, we're focused on this second part of the project, with this Engagement Ready Roanoke, where we're looking at this idea of this cross-sector collaboration, which I mentioned earlier, requires us to engage with each other, be in conversation with one another, be in relationship with one another in that space. We try to come in with a very open mind. I am a city resident, so I'm familiar with Roanoke, but we as a team try to come in with this sense that there's something, we're hearing from people that something is not working. What are we seeing in the current state of how this is happening in Roanoke? So our goal for this entire process is here to kind of engage in open and thoughtful conversation, hold space for these things, with 2 specific outputs. The first of those being a citywide community engagement policy. The second one of those being department level planning and capacity building and training in those spaces. So to build up for all of that till we get to that place where we can do that, we engaged in a listening campaign with 3 distinct portions. We held listening sessions. We held 2 listening sessions for city staff, one for high-level city staff, one for middle and lower-level city staff, and then we held 4 listening sessions for the members of the public, one in each quadrant of the city. We also did a number of one-on-one interviews, over 30 interviews, and we continue to have those interviews, and we'll hope to have many more as the project continues at this point. And we also did a broader survey where we had over 175 responses to that survey in these spaces. I'll share a little bit more about what we found in those spaces with you all here in a moment. But first, I just want to talk a little bit about where we hope this all is going. The first piece of which is a citywide policy, as I mentioned, around community engagement. This policy being the foundation on which this community engagement occurs. What is this understanding of expectations around community engagement? How do we understand what it is when the city is asking for feedback, when someone comes to the city, what are the expectations that are in place in that space? So there's currently a group of 8 city staff people and 8 residents working together in this policy development space. This is consonant with our approach to all of this, is that we may be the pen that actually does much of the writing, but they will be making all the decisions in this conversation. They will be the ones authoring this in this space. We'll be meeting twice a month over the next 4 to 6 months. We've already had our first meeting, and so we're hoping to bring before you all a draft towards the end of this year at this point in time for what this policy may look like. In terms of the second piece of this, we're looking at this department level planning, because we all know you can have a policy and have it not mean anything at the end of the day because people are not prepared to enact it. So we believe that how the Department of Transportation, how the libraries are going to do community engagement is not the same as how planning or economic development is going to do engagement. So we recognize the need for this department level approach and department level training or whatever it may be in these spaces. And we're starting to work with planning, building, and development to move forward in these conversations at this point in time as the initial department we're working with. So now I'll move into the findings here. These findings were initially shared as a group of 18 total, which you should all have access to the full list. We're going to share a few of the highlights here, but these were shared publicly in February. And you'll see each of the findings is kind of connected to a suggestion of what this might mean regarding quote unquote good engagement. This process, we've really been focusing on the idea that we don't know what good engagement is supposed to be. We have a bunch of presumptions across space as to what that might be. And so this is hoping to unpack some of these things a bit. So the first of these we'd say would be that engagement is not just the participatory meetings we think about. Those are a very vital part of this, but it's everything from how you're greeted when you walk through the halls of City Hall, that what happens when you go to pay your taxes, what happens when you call the city, have a problem, what happens when you show up, or even when you're driving on the city roads. How are you, all of these are part of this engagement milieu in which participatory meetings are perhaps the place where we see it and it manifests, but all of that is part of how the city and public are engaging with one another in these spaces. We also recognize that a lot of this communication is happening through things that are mediating the communication. So while there's a lot of one-on-one conversations happening, there's also a lot of conversations that are happening through social media, that are happening through news outlets, all of which is changing how communication is happening in these spaces. So there's a recognition here that the engagement has to be responsive to these communication challenges, has to be understanding of how these mediators are acting in this relationship. We also found that some residents, unsurprisingly, feel that they're not being heard in these spaces. We think of that in two forms in these spaces. Sometimes that's as simple as they just don't know if they've actually been heard. They don't get a response to their reach out. Sometimes that's also they feel like they've been technically heard, but it's not heard in terms of the incorporation of what's actually happening in these spaces. So both of those forms are being heard here. So we would suggest that good engagement might need to include listening necessarily and a willingness to learn in these spaces. On the flip side, we heard from many staff that they feel vulnerable and stressed in these conversations. Some are worried that they might lose their job. They're not sure, or they're unsure how to give bad information, or not bad information, but bad news to people that may not want to hear it. They're not sure what decisions they can make in any given moment. They're unsure of the constraints that are upon them at any given time. So we might suggest that staff need to have this degree of confidence that has to be built in some kind of grace and support and recognition that things maybe go wrong at certain points in time. We also found, we think we learned that engagement sometimes occurs without clear expectations. Again, this is unlikely to be surprising for any of you all at this point in time. That there may not be clarity about what is possible. There may not be clarity about how communication is going to occur, about who's going to make decisions. And so we would suggest in the good engagement might need to be thoughtfully constructed in these spaces, that it needs to be carefully considered before it is done in these spaces and communicated with these clear intentions. Additionally, we often, there's a presumption in some spaces that community engagement is going to lead to clear answers in these spaces. My apologies. If you do community engagement, that it's going to come back and it's going to tell you exactly what the answer needs to be. We found this is very rarely the case in these spaces, that often what you're doing is complicating things and raising, at the same time you're raising these conflictual issues, raising the concerns, you're also creating promises in some of those engagements that you're going to do something about it. When you ask people what they want and you don't do anything about it, that's in some cases worse than when you don't ask them at all in those spaces. So there's an expectation that's raised in that space as well. So then there's a suggestion that good engagement might need to be, or always need to be accompanied by the courage to make decisions that are going to make some people unhappy in those spaces. And this is the last thing I'll share here, is just that engagement is always, we found was always going to require balancing competing priorities. This is kind of across the spectrum in this space. That may be competing stakeholder groups, which may be what we're used to in these spaces, but it also may be balancing efficiency versus equity, or efficiency versus effectiveness, or justice claims versus openness. There's all these different competing claims that are happening here. There may be competing job responsibilities that are involved in these spaces. There may also be competing forms of knowledge and expertise that are in these spaces. The stories, the history of neighborhoods versus the technical knowledge of a transportation engineer may be coming into conflict with each other, and it's going to require navigation and balancing of these competing ideas in this space. So we might then suggest that good engagement will always involve making mistakes, hopefully learning from them, and being able to continue to try and moving forward. So we continue to move forward in these spaces. We will be continuing to have conversations with members of the public, members of city staff, as we go through this policy development process, and continue to do this departmental work at the same time. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you for that overview, Mr. Stevens. Do I have questions from council members? Mr. Volleson?
So now that we've gone through this part of the process, what do the next steps look like?
So the next steps are this committee will continue to meet over the next 4 months. We are going to task them with doing their own community engagement. Once they have a draft policy, how do they want to solicit feedback on that? And once that policy has been drafted, it will go up the chain at that point. And we will be spending more time here as we work with planning, building, and development intensively in these spaces. So similarly to how we work individually with each of those nonprofits, we anticipate working with planning and building and development. Again, not with the sense that we come in with answers for them, but in the sense that we will be talking with them, trying to think through what engagement needs to look like in their space, trying to open imaginative possibilities of what it could be in these spaces.
One of the things that you talked about with the nonprofits, and it's something I tend to see a lot in the city, is this is the way we've done it for a long time, and there's pushback against that. But once they do, they find that change is what reinvigorates the organization. How many? So you've worked with 9 now. Are you guys planning to expand, or is that kind of the 9 that's going to be with? I think it's great.
I believe there is a budget request in with you all now to continue this for another year of both continuing to work with departments as well as doing another cohort of 10 organizations for next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Nash?
I would say that this is important work, particularly more so. I mean, yes, us learning how to effectively communicate with the community better is, I think, critical, because without communication, you can't build trust. And communication and trust are the foundation of everything else that's to come after that. But also, particularly the work with the nonprofits. I think it's kind of like the proverb of, if you teach a man to fish, he can eat for a lifetime, or however, I don't know exactly how it's worded, but something to that effect, right? And we're teaching these nonprofit organizations, which most of the time people start just because they have the passion, right? They see the need and they jump in, and that's honorable. And I love that. And I love the fact that we are helping them learn the back end work of, hey, you have the passion, excellent, but this is how you do all the other things that you need to do so that you can execute and bring that passion or bring those desired results that you want to life. So I think it's really critical work. So thank you very much, and I appreciate you and your team.
Thank you.
Or comments? Well, I would just add to that, great overview. I think especially, well, both aspects of this work are really important. I think all of us, whether we work in a city department or as elected officials, we want to do what we can to make engagement more. As you said, it's kind of the combination of efficiency, effectiveness, and equity, all of those things working together. I was really pleased to hear the intention, several of the nonprofits to collaborate together. I think that makes the community much healthier and whole when that happens. The tendency is, with anything that we do, to silo it, and some of that's out of protection. We do this thing and we may do it well, and we don't want anyone else doing it. Yet we have to be cognizant, if we're going to reach more people and provide the services that we want to provide, we can do that better when we're working together. And Children's Trust, which you all saw earlier, they are a perfect example of this, becoming an umbrella for a number of programs within the city that are working to save children's lives and hopefully to even restore families. The other thing was something that you mentioned but didn't dwell on a lot, but I really liked, is the organization that decided they didn't need to be a nonprofit. When the first Mayor's Business Summit that we hosted a year ago, we had a lot of nonprofits there. And one of the things I mentioned, and Councilman Nash, you alluded to this, there's this belief that when we have a really good idea to do something that's going to benefit people's lives, that we start out with the program. And then we realize that, oh, if we're going to need funding, then we suddenly need to become a nonprofit. Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes that program could nestle really well within an existing nonprofit that could serve as the fiscal agent for that program. It aligns, their missions align. And so I think helping groups, grassroots groups like that really think through those options, it can continue to make that program very efficient and effective, serving in an equitable way, but not with the extra overhead or the additional responsibilities. So I'm really grateful to the work you're doing and look forward to hearing back from the committee of the staff and city residents on how we can strengthen our engagement. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have two of our closed meetings that are time specific today. The first of those is at 3:30. So I'm going to select some of the items recommended for action based on how long I think they might take. But we're going to recess at 3:25 so that we can be prepared for the 3:30 closed session. Once that closed session is over, we will reconvene here in chambers to continue business. And then the next time-specific closed meeting is 4:30. So we will have those two interruptions, and I wanted to make sure the public knows about that as we progress through our meeting this afternoon. Let's turn first to item A, recommended for action, acceptance and appropriation of the Virginia Tourism Corporation grant for GoFest 2026. We have one measure and ordinance, and I'll entertain a motion and second on that ordinance.
I move the motion.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Councilwoman Powers and Sanchez Jones. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
An ordinance authorizing acceptance of the Virginia Tourism Corporation grant made to the city of Roanoke for the marketing and promotional efforts of the 2026 Go Outside Festival, authorizing the city manager or designee to execute and file appropriate documents to obtain such funds, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you. Ms. Turner, anything to add to
No
that?
comments, thank you.
All right. Any comments or questions from members of council? All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones? Vice Mayor McGuire?
Aye.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers?
Aye.
Mr. Hagan?
Aye.
Mayor Cobb?
Aye, and the ordinance is adopted. And since we're almost at 3:25, I'm going to recess us to prepare for our 3:30 closed meeting, and then we will reconvene once that closed meeting is over. We are in recess.
Single intonation and freeze in what someone is seeing.
I will do a brief introduction to my story. There is a lot there, but then I will give the other chapters you can open if you wish, and it's up to you.
Tom Fadden's book title is Wheelchair User.
So, the beginnings of my story. At the age of 2, I was given a diagnosis of cerebral palsy. That's caused by lack of oxygen to the brain shortly after or during birth.
Fadden says that he'll answer just about any question a reader asks. But there's one question that did test his limits as an open book.
Essentially a question around, should my parents, if they knew I was disabled, should they have done something? So should I have been aborted? And that was probably the most challenging question I had, because I was like, oh, he's asking whether I should be here or not.
Fadden makes clear he thinks that question was well-intentioned, even if hurtful. He says that being a book can be just as insightful for him as it is for his readers.
Outside the library, it's made me want to understand situations more. So I hope it's made me a little bit more patient, a little bit more curious, and a little bit more understanding. I can't say I fully unjudged everyone, because we're always challenged on that, but I'm a work in progress.
And that was the idea when Ronnie Abergel founded the first human library here in Copenhagen 25 years ago. He says that he wanted people to unjudge each other, to challenge their assumptions. Today, his nonprofit, the Human Library Organization, has chapters or publishing partners in over 85 countries, including Australia, Japan, and the US.
Maybe there's less to be afraid of once we get talking to people. So sometimes it just might seem better to actually meet somebody who is trans or policeman or a sex worker before you make up your mind about them.
Abergel says that he was inspired by his own experience, Growing up in Denmark with a mixed half Danish, half Moroccan background, he would frequently get asked questions about where he came from.
But I'm just as Scandinavian as they are, and I grew up here, and it's my country. I speak Danish, and I am part of the Danish culture. So I came up with the idea because I thought there are too many conversations it seems we can't have.
But Abigail is worried about the future of these conversations. The reading garden where we met here in Denmark is closing indefinitely.
Because we live in polarizing times, which means there isn't the same support for the type of work that we do that there was in the past.
While the Human Library is a nonprofit, only about 3% of its funding comes from donor support. Abigail tells me that the organization's mission to help improve understanding between different groups and communities translated well into diversity, equity, and inclusion training. For the longest time, U.S. companies made up the single biggest group of corporate partners for the Human Library. But Abigail says that since Donald Trump turned his rhetoric against DEI initiatives, those 200-plus corporate partners have dwindled.
And our country will be woke no longer.
Well, Abigail says he doesn't have the resources right now to keep the reading garden open. The Human Library will continue with its pop-up events at schools, at festivals, or wherever they're still welcome. For the World, I'm Joshua Coe, Copenhagen, Denmark.
And they're off. That was not the Boston Marathon, which took place today. It was won in 2 hours, 1 minute, and 52 seconds. The starting horn you just heard was the beginning of the Beijing Half Marathon yesterday. The first place finisher clocking in at 50 minutes, 26 seconds. Too many numbers? Well, let's just say that winning time was a good bit faster in running time than the world record. And the winner didn't even break a sweat. That's Du Shuiao-Di, one of the engineers who created the humanoid robot that won the race. Du says the robot was modeled on outstanding human athletes and how their legs move. Yeah, except human athletes don't have the same powerful liquid cooling system. The robot, built by a cell phone company called Honor, more than halved last year's robot record. One of the spectators at the race, Sun Jagang, says he can't wait to see what comes next. This is the first time robots have surpassed humans, which I never imagined, Sun says. I'm very excited for the future. If you're not getting Terminator vibes from this news, maybe you should. China is competing hard with the U.S. on technology, and this robot race is one way to show it off. U.S. officials have said autonomous robots like the ones at the race could, at some point, pose a national security threat. You're with the world.
Cold tonight, but then we'll warm up into the middle part of the week. Your Radio IQ forecast will be mostly clear and cold tonight, leading to widespread areas of frost and freezing. Lows bottom out in the mid-20s to 36 for Wise. Sunshine for our Tuesday, a little breezy, and will be warmer as highs climb into the mid-60s and lower 70s. Pretty cloudy on Wednesday with some spotty showers and storms possible. Fairly breezy with high temperatures in the upper 60s to near 84 degrees for Danville.
Every morning, your neighbor turns on Radio IQ while making coffee. A teacher listens during her commute. A small business owner tunes in at lunch. These moments add up to something powerful, a community connected by curiosity and informed by quality journalism. When you become a corporate sponsor, you're not just reaching listeners. You're becoming part of the fabric that holds our region together. Be part of something bigger. Email WVTF corporate support at vt.edu.
This is The World. I'm Marco Werman. There have been rumblings for a while, but now several European countries are making it official. Over the weekend, Ireland, Slovenia, and Spain demanded that the EU cut ties with Israel. They cited Israel's new death penalty law for Palestinians convicted of terrorism and the government's support for violent Israeli settlers in the Palestinian West Bank, among other things. This is not new, but as The World's Jerry Haddon reports from Barcelona, anger toward the Israeli government appears to be growing.
Spain, Ireland, and Slovenia sent their demand to the European Commission in Brussels on Saturday. It's time to end the European Union Association Agreement with Israel, they said. In other words, to sever diplomatic and trade ties. The demand was in writing. This weekend, Sanchez put voice to it.
Y aquel gobierno que viola el derecho internacional y por tanto viola.
Any government that violates human rights and therefore the values of the EU, Sanchez said, cannot be a partner of the EU. It's that simple. Sanchez used a brand new pulpit to deliver that message to the world, the first ever Global Progressives Mobilization Summit, an event he hosted in Barcelona. Invited were thousands of Socialist Party reps, left-leaning NGOs, and world leaders, including Colombia's President Gustavo Petro, Mexico's Claudia Sheinbaum, and Brazil's Ignacio Lula da Silva. Here's Lula speaking through an interpreter.
No president of any country in the world, no matter how powerful, has the right to impose rules on other countries. We cannot wake up every morning and go to sleep every night with the president's Twitter account threatening the world, making war.
Without naming names, Lula was taking a shot at U.S. President Donald Trump, a close ally of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The progressives' larger goal to stop recent advances by the far right in the U.S., Latin America, and Europe. The mood at the summit was upbeat after the historic elections in Hungary just days earlier saw the defeat of far-right Prime Minister Viktor Orban. By playing host in Barcelona, Sanchez was positioning himself as the global progressive movement's new leader. His supporters say he's earned it for speaking out early and strongly against the wars in Iran, Lebanon, and Gaza.
Y que establezca la prohibición legal y permanente de
This was Sanchez in 2025 announcing an arms embargo on Israel. This after accusing Israel of genocide for its killing of Palestinians in Gaza in response to the October 2023 Hamas massacre in Israel. Israel's foreign minister, Gideon Sa'ar, then accused Spain of anti-Semitism, and France as well.
If they are so enthusiastic to establish a Palestinian state, they have huge territories, Spain and France. They can do that.
Europeans have, in recent months, begun to sour on Israel's government, says Beth Oppenheim. She's a Middle East and North Africa fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations. She says the Israeli-American war on Iran has infuriated and alienated Brussels, which was caught by surprise. But she says the problem runs deeper than this current conflict.
I think that for a long time, this sense of shared ideological affinity between Israel and Europe, that's been a significant part of, I think, the European and Israeli relationship, this kind of ideological affinity, liberal, democratic, shared values.
The conservative government of Benjamin Netanyahu, she says, has undermined this affinity in war, but also in words.
Europe, which swore after the World War to defend what is good, is today afflicted by a profound moral weakness.
This was Netanyahu last week on Holocaust Memorial Day, criticizing the EU.
Europe is losing control over its identity, over its values, over its commitment to safeguard civilization against barbarism. But this eternal commitment, Israel does not forget.
Beth Oppenheim says rhetoric like this is straining ties with the EU, a bloc she points out that is Israel's largest trading partner. Europe has leverage to apply against the Israeli government, she says. Tomorrow, EU foreign ministers meet. They'll vote on whether to sanction violent Israeli settlers in the West Bank. That's one move among many that Spain's Pedro Sanchez has been pushing for. For The World, I'm Sherry Haddon, Barcelona.
Just how long is the English coastline? The question is prompted by the launch of a new national hiking path that hugs the English shore. As to its length, it turns out the answer to that is actually very squishy. Some estimates say it's just under 8,000 miles. Others calculate over 12,000 miles. There are similar discrepancies for most coastlines around the world. It's because of this thing called the coastal paradox. Geographer Catherine Samler is an expert in that paradox. She started by describing the coastal environment.
It's a really complex terrain, and there's all sorts of inlets and jagged rocks and sandy stretches that, like, where you actually decide to take a measurement really matters. And that's going to determine partially what the length is that you get. I looked at New Zealand's coastline before, and they have multiple different kind of coastlines depending on which official you might ask. So the New Zealand Department of Conservation says 15,000 kilometers, but others say it's less than 14,000. So This idea of a coastline paradox means that the length of a country's coastline depends on the length of the ruler used.
So you're talking about rulers. How do cartographers actually measure a coastline?
Well, I think there are a lot of different ways that cartographers will go out and make that measurement. But if they want to find out a nation's coastline, that there's kind of some international standards that are based on nautical charts. And this is kind of after decades of negotiation, determining what scale to take that measurement at. And that's because, of course, national borders are built on coastlines, and that kind of determines what different resources coastal nations have access to.
I mean, it sounds existential, frankly. I mean, are you saying there is not an international standard for measuring coastlines?
I'm saying there's an approximation that people have agreed upon based on kind of the average scale of a nautical chart. But I think it is actually existential as well. And there's a French mathematician who originally defined this kind of tricky idea of the coastal paradox. Is a French mathematician named Benoit Mandelbrot. And he's really poetic in saying that the coastline length is very elusive and that it's so ill-determined it can best be considered infinite. And I think that's a really good reminder about kind of our complex relationship with the natural world, and that it's always something that's a social and political relationship.
And when did that Frenchman discover this coastal paradox, or name it?
Yeah, he's writing about it in the 1980s, so really not that long ago. And actually that's during these decades of negotiation for the United Nations law, the Sea Treaty, which really set the standard.
So what are some of the other rulers or gauges by which we are able to measure coastlines?
I mean, I think that a lot of people are just kind of drawing a boundary based on, something that looks like a Google map. So something that's pretty zoomed out. Perhaps at like a satellite scale, you can start to take images of a coastline. But if you're walking the coastline and using survey equipment, you're going to get a lot more of the kind of complexity of the little inlets and outcroppings. And so it's just making that choice of, do we want to just cut a straight line, or do we want to measure into each kind of sinuous bay and capture that? And so as you zoom in, that coastline gets longer and longer.
You kind of were nodding to this earlier, Catherine, but this must have a huge influence on geopolitical relationships. Like, we know about land grabs and annexation of territories by one country from another, but have we seen conflict break out because of disagreements about where that coastline is?
Yes. I mean, I think there's been a lot of disagreement about where the coasts and the lines of national boundaries should be drawn in different parts of the South China Sea, say, for example, which also has other complexities of which rocks count as islands. So you could have a whole nother segment on what is an island or not an island.
Or islands that are created whole cloth out of nothing.
Indeed. And I think for geopolitics, it's been really difficult for countries to agree because the stakes are really large for ocean resources and coastal communities. It's, of course, becoming more challenging with sea level rise where, coastline isn't static. You can measure it day to day and get different measurements because the coast is always moving and shifting. And sea level rise means that we're seeing a lot more changes that are kind of undermining the justifications for political borders at the coast. And so there's going to be a lot more disagreements about whose territory belongs to whom, especially for many low-lying nations and Pacific Islands who are really concerned that their offshore fishing rights might disappear as a kind of international agreed-upon boundary erodes and becomes submerged.
I mean, even without climate change, there is tide change, which can be radically different in some parts of the world. If you think of the Bay of Fundy between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, what does all this mean for our understanding of the coastline as we go into the future?
Well, I think it's something that people need to negotiate and agree upon, that I think, coastal communities are on the front lines right now as we see, Black Sand Beach that's famous in Iceland was just washed away a few weeks ago. There was, several Alaska Native communities, many of the homes of their villages washed away last fall. There's very material impacts from sea level rise, but there's also political impacts that potentially can be negotiated away to kind of at least resolve some of these issues so that we can focus on these real material changes that are impacting people's lives. And so there's been several international law committee meetings about how to talk about and agree on national borders that are being changed to kind of reduce the risk of geopolitical disagreements.
Catherine Samler is an independent scholar and political geographer. We reached her in Spain. Hatshepsut is not a name you hear often or ever, even though as pharaoh of Egypt for 22 years, she was one of the most powerful women in antiquity. But she was purposely and methodically erased from history. There are lots of theories about why. Recent research is adding another piece to the puzzle. Sarah Birnbaum reports.
If you could meet one person from history, who would it be? For Egyptologist Campbell Price at the University of Manchester, that's a no-brainer.
Absolutely Hatshepsut.
The female king of Egypt some 3,500 years ago.
Hatshepsut, if she'd been a male king, would be talked of as one of the greatest kings of pharaonic times because she builds a huge amount. She dispatches significant trading expeditions beyond Egypt's borders. She must have a hand in with the military as well, although that often gets forgotten. So she's an all-rounder.
Hatshepsut is the daughter of the pharaoh Thutmose I. When he dies, she marries her half-brother, do not judge, Thutmose II. And when he dies, her stepson, Thutmose III, becomes pharaoh. Only he's like 2 years old. So Hatshepsut steps in to govern the country just until he comes of age, presumably. And then she's supposed to step back into the shadows. But she doesn't step back.
Hatshepsut just goes for it at some point, maybe significantly when Thutmose III is maybe coming of age and getting a mind of his own. She says, no, guess what? I'm going to be the pharaoh with you.
Technically, she's a co-pharaoh. Thutmose III is still in the picture, but Hatshepsut is running the show. And to prove it, she has carved reliefs and statues of herself put everywhere. Hatshepsut dies in 1457 BC. We think of natural causes. Then, 20 years later, Thutmose III, who is now on the throne by himself, he has her statues destroyed and her likeness hacked off temple walls. He tries to edit her out of history. Fast forward to the 1920s, American archaeologists find 2 pits near the temple complex at Deir el-Bahri, Egypt, and they're filled with thousands of fragments of statues of Hatshepsut. It looks like a crime scene to them, and they figure Thutmose III must have been so angry at his stepmom for stealing the throne that he wanted every image of her smashed to bits.
When I first looked at these pictures of these fragmented statues, I would tend to agree with the early archaeologists that this was kind of an emotionally fueled attack.
Jun Wang is a doctoral candidate at the University of Toronto.
My research actually suggests that it's more nuanced than that.
For his PhD, Wang is researching every fragment to figure out where it was found, how it was damaged, and why. His findings were recently published in the journal Antiquity. Wang concludes that Thutmose III did cut down statues of Hatshepsut, but he did it in a super specific way.
They were broken across the neck and the waist and the feet, but that's pretty much all the damage that they've sustained.
So what's going on? Statue foot fetish? Maybe, but no. Wang thinks Thutmose III probably wanted to take credit for all the impressive stuff Hatshepsut did during their joint reign, so he had her statues, quote, ritually deactivated. In ancient Egypt, statues were alive. They're the vessel for the ka, or spirit of the deceased person.
When they were first fashioned or completed, the statues would be subjected to a ceremony called the opening of the mouth, where essentially it's given the breath of life. And it's almost viewed as, a living entity. So when statues have to be disposed of, this inherent power has to be neutralized.
Wang says Thutmose had this done with care and premeditation, not at all like a man in the throes of anger.
I think Wong's work is incredibly useful in that he systematically goes through every statue.
Kara Cooney is an Egyptologist at UCLA. Her book about Hatshepsut is called The Woman Who Would Be King.
Where I have a problem is when he then says, oh, the way the statues were destroyed means that it wasn't personal, that it wasn't filled with rage and anger. We don't know any of those things.
Cooney thinks Thutmose had a dynastic reason for doing what he did. He starts destroying the reliefs and statuary right around the time he's grooming his chosen son to be the next pharaoh, a son who isn't connected to Hatshepsut by blood.
And Hatshepsut's presence haunting the temples, her statuary all around, would have made the Egyptian elites look and think about who had not been picked as the next king. And I think for that reason, they had to remove her.
And then there's just the larger patriarchal discussion, Cooney says. If Hatshepsut were allowed to stay, then any royal wife or ambitious sister or powerful aunt could point to her example and say, Hatshepsut ruled Egypt, so can I. Best to just expunge her, Cooney says.
Patriarchs don't like women sneaking into their business, and to remove them is expedient.
Cooney says this gets to a central paradox about women and power. If Hatshepsut were like Cleopatra, who lost her kingdom and died by suicide, we'd all be talking about her. She'd be the subject of dozens of biopics. But Hatshepsut had the misfortune of being one of the most powerful rulers in the ancient world. And for that, Cooney says, she languishes in relative obscurity. For The World, I'm Sarah Birnbaum.
You're with The World.
Support for The World comes from Odoo. Odoo streamlines every aspect of your company in one simple and efficient business management platform. More information at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com. And by Progressive Insurance. From car insurance quotes to buying, Progressive Insurance offers a variety of ways to stay protected. More at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
How do you find and start your life's work? That is the question journalist Jodi Kantor aims to answer in her new book.
I said to myself, you know what? The really happy and successful people know how to do something that other people don't do. It's skill, it's expertise.
I'm Mary Louise Kelly. Kantor's advice on launching a career and a life in uncertain times on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Tune in for All Things Considered beginning at 4 on Radio IQ.
Support for Radio IQ is provided in part by Charlottesville Dermatology and Newell Medical Spa, celebrating 28 years of practicing medical and cosmetic dermatology. More at nuamedspa.com or sevillederm.com. And from the Roanoke Cultural Endowment, committed to building a sustainable source of funding for arts and cultural organizations in Roanoke. Invest in the arts, invest in the future. RoanokeCulturalEndowment.org.
This is The World. I'm Marco Werman. From the 1500s and lasting about 200 years, the Renaissance in Europe led to advancements and big changes in art, science, and culture. But just about everyone we know from that era is a man. There were, of course, women involved in all those things. In the case of composers, often their music got hidden away. Musica Secreta is an ensemble dedicated to researching and performing the female repertoire from the Renaissance. Arts journalist Brendan O'Shea brings us that story from Berlin.
For centuries, women's voices in music were confined to secrecy. Courtiers, courtesans, actrices, and cloistered nuns created brilliant, inventive music, but it was hidden from public recognition. Musica Secreta is a group dedicated to bringing these long-suppressed voices back to life. ensemble was founded by the late soprano Deborah Roberts in the 1980s. She was driven by a passion for women's polyphony and the hidden repertoire of Renaissance Italy. She inspired and mentored the group until her passing in 2024. Today, musicologist and historian Laurie Strauss serves as the ensemble's overall director and was, too, a long-time collaborator of Deborah Roberts. She continues the group's mission, often premiering works she uncovers through her own academic research.
Deborah loved polyphony, and Deborah was fascinated by the history of women singers and their place in music history.
By performing works by Maddalena Casulana, Barbara Strozzi and Isabella Leonarda, Musica Secreta restores the music of women once hidden in convents and courts, allowing their artistry to resonate today. Christina Watt, the ensemble's lutenist and a singer, explains what made this secretive female musical culture so special.
I think what is amazing is that we're sort of able to explore this world, which was a very secret world back various time periods in the 16th century, 17th century, of women being in community together and making music and having their own sort of supportive community.
In the past, these private musical gatherings allowed women to compose and perform boldly, even when society sought to silence them. Today, the ensemble says the atmosphere remains uniquely special.
It's so different from any other vocal ensemble I work with because there are no men. It's a female voice texture. I suppose it's so complete in that as well because there is a considerable amount of range within the female voice. So playing with that, when I'm in that world, I don't really miss anything. I don't miss the guys.
That sense of camaraderie and enjoyment is echoed by Caroline Trevor.
We always have a good time, whatever the music is, whether we're in a freezing cold church or, whatever. The dynamic is great. Even if there are little niggles, it's easily sorted and I love it.
But it hasn't all been smooth sailing. Laurie Strauss highlights the long shadow of misogyny in music history.
There are so many assumptions that we make because of the way history is written. History is written by genealogies. It's written through kind of the great men and who inherits what from whom. And the best analogy I have to describe how great women composers and musicians and music makers are described in even enlightened histories is they're put in a box. So the women of Ferrara are in a box. Maddalena Casulana is in a box. Barbara Strozzi is in a box. And the flow of music history flows around them like a river around an island, and then it closes over them again. And then it may open up again over another female musician, and then it closes over them again. We don't see women's music making as an integral part of our music history.
The ensemble sings from the historic choir books, and this requires intense focus as every member follows their own line and keeps track of subtle cues. Ensemble member Victoria Cooper explains the process.
For gigs, we're on the choir book and there are congruences written in. So there's little pictorial symbols that mean that there's a sort of coming together point. If you feel like you've gotten lost, you can get back in there. And someone in the group will always mark that with a symbol of their hand coming down, which is super good.
Beyond uncovering Renaissance repertoire, Musica Secreta also channels its work into meaningful contemporary projects. Laurie Strauss explains one initiative close to the ensemble's heart.
The Boobs Project. So what we did was We created a playlist with all of our other early music friends. We looked particularly for motets and madrigals with about breasts, and any proceeds went towards breast cancer charities because Deborah died of metastatic breast cancer. And it was always something that Deborah and I wanted to do. We always wanted to do the Boobs Project. It still happened while she was alive. And the final release and a live performance in the BBC on the Feast of St. Agatha. And of course, Agatha is the saint whose martyrdom is her breasts are cut off. So her attribute is her breasts on a plate. So we thought it was quite a fitting day.
Musica Secreta gives voice to women who were long silenced, restoring brilliance, agency, and a music history that finally listens. Most importantly, as Laurie Strauss says, it brings the world brilliant music. This is Brendan O'Shea in Berlin.
Brendan's report comes to us from DW's Inside Europe podcast. The World is produced by GBH and PRX, broadcasting weekdays from the Nan and Bill Harris studio in Boston and from the Department of Communication at UC San Diego. You can find us online anytime at theworld.org, and you know we're on YouTube. We've got all kinds of original reporting on our channel. That's The World News GBH. I'm Marco Werman. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Supported by the Carnegie Corporation of New York, working to reduce political polarization through philanthropic support for education, democracy, and peace. More information at carnegie.org. By the Lumina Foundation, committed to a fair, universal system for learning beyond high school that offers every American the chance for a better life. LuminaFoundation.org. By the PRX Ambassador Council, whose members include Renee Vacchio-Albi, Roman Mars, the Kelson Foundation, and the Ken and Lucy Lehman family. The World's theme music is composed by Ned Porter. The World is a co-production of GBH Boston and PRX.
Every long-form story on a topic that piques your interest, every music feature that introduces you to a new artist, every discovery you find thanks to this public radio station is supported by listener donations. That support includes cars, trucks, and SUVs. I'm Martinez. Donate your vehicle now, and the next time you hear something great, you can shout, "Hey, my car did that." Here's how.
Go to radioiq.org and click the support tab and select vehicle donation.
You're listening to Radio IQ on WVTF Roanoke, WRIQ Charles City Richmond, WVTU Charlottesville, WVTW Charlottesville, WVTR Marion, WISC FM Wise, WQIQ Spotsylvania, WIUR Lexington, WEHC Emory, HD3 of WURV Richmond, and on 92.5 Richmond and 94.9 Fredericksburg. Radio IQ, a listener-supported community service of Virginia Tech, on your smart speaker and online at radioiq.org.
Hold my breath until I actually see the money deposited into my bank account, but so far everything seems to be pretty straightforward and simple.
The tariff refund process is kicking off, and $166 billion is at stake.
It's Monday, April 20th, and this is All Things Considered from NPR News.
I'm Juana Summers.
And I'm Scott Detrow. What if you had a robot help out with your chores at home?
Some scientists say they've made a breakthrough that could allow robots to figure these tasks out on their own.
It looks like this robot is capable of doing some very impressive feats of learning.
Also, the latest on the shaky ceasefire in the Middle East. Where do things stand with the U.S. and Iran?
And the next installment of the My Unsung Hero series.
All I know is that whoever she was, the fact that she whispered that to me secretly kept me from making a terrible mistake.
First News.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. As the end to the U.S. and Iran ceasefire agreement draws closer, President Trump is insisting that the U.S. has been successful in Iran and that he's not under pressure to make a deal with Iran. He also slammed media outlets for their reporting on the conflict. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben has more.
In an afternoon social media post, Trump framed the war in Iran, now in its 8th week, as short compared to the U.S.'s years-long involvements in past conflicts, including World Wars I and II, as well as the wars in Vietnam and Iraq. In a post shortly thereafter, he wrote, quote, "I'm winning a war by a lot," and criticized multiple news outlets for reporting otherwise. President Trump tells Bloomberg that the ceasefire announced nearly 2 weeks ago expires Wednesday evening. A U.S. delegation plans to travel to Islamabad soon for further peace talks, according to an official familiar with the plans. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News, the White House.
Farmers in the Midwest are anxious over the on-again, off-again closure of the Strait of Hormuz. NPR's Kirk Sigler reports global fertilizer and diesel prices continue to soar.
Geopolitics is just the latest stress for farmers like Justin Sherlock, who grows soybeans and corn in North Dakota. He's going into his 4th straight spring planting season in the red. The only way most farmers are still able to get a loan from the bank is because land prices are still high, and that's collateral.
Farmers are pledging everything, betting the farm, literally, to go one more year, hoping we can make it. And that's not a good place for us to be in.
High diesel and fertilizer costs due to President Trump's Iran war are capping what's been a slow burn in the heartland since COVID. And then tariffs, with soybean prices staying flat and inflation rising. Sherlock says something's got to give soon. Kirk Sigler, NPR News, Fargo, North Dakota.
Prosecutors in Los Angeles have formally charged singer-songwriter David with murder in connection with the death of Celeste Rivas. The teenager's dismembered and decomposing body was found in the trunk of the performer's apparently abandoned Tesla last year. L.A. County District Attorney Nathan Hochman details the charges.
These charges include the most serious charges that a DA's office can bring. That is first-degree murder with special circumstances. The special circumstances being lying in wait, committing this crime for financial gain, or murdering a witness in an investigation.
Hochman says the defendant, whose legal name is David Burke, could be looking at a maximum punishment of life without parole or even the death penalty. After Burke was arrested last week, his attorneys released a statement saying the actual evidence will show their client did not murder Rivas. U.S. stocks have closed lower with the Dow down slightly at 49,442. This is NPR.
For Radio IQ News, I'm Craig Wright. Good afternoon. Senate Democrats are at odds with House Democrats and the Democrat in the executive mansion over the budget. And as Michael Pope tells us, they're not likely to resolve their differences anytime soon.
Ask former Governor Glenn Youngkin what happens when you find yourself on the wrong side of Senator Louise Lucas, chairwoman of the powerful Senate Finance Committee. She took his proposal for a sports arena in Alexandria and pounded it into dust. Now she's standing firm against an effort by House Democrats and Governor Abigail Spanberger to keep a $1 billion tax break for data centers. Here's Senator Lucas speaking to reporters a few weeks ago.
You all know my position is, I'm very, very firm on it, is that they just pay their fair share of taxes.
The last time Virginia failed to have a budget by the beginning of the fiscal year on July 1st was when Republicans had the trifecta, and Republican Governor Jim Gilmore clashed with Senate Republicans over the car tax. Now, with the benefit of hindsight, Gilmore says he should have publicly taken on Senate Republicans.
And now I can look back and say that was a mistake. I should have taken the Republican senators on and fought them publicly. That's what my advice would be to Governor Spanberger. If she's passive on this, if she does not fight Senator Lucas on the merits of the issue, then she will be a loser.
Members of the General Assembly are scheduled to gavel into a special session Thursday to consider a solution to the budget impasse. Although so far it looks like there's no solution in sight. Michael Pope.
Early voting is done, but Virginians still have one more chance to cast the ballot on the state's redistricting amendments. Regular polling places will be open tomorrow from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can check your registration status and find more information on the State Department of Elections website. That's elections.virginia.gov. For Radio IQ News, I'm Craig Wright.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Scott Detrow.
And I'm Juana Summers. Today is Tariff Refund Day. After weeks of waiting, business owners can finally log on to a new government portal and ask for their money back. Now, this is for most of the tariffs President Trump imposed last year. The Supreme Court rejected them as unconstitutional 2 months ago to the day. NPR's Alina Selyuk has been talking to business owners about how this is going. How it's going. Hi there.
Hello, hello.
So now, what have you heard so far? How has this first day of tariff refunds gone?
You know, for the most part, surprisingly uneventful, which is kind of a weird thing to say in a news magazine.
Right.
But there was a lot of trepidation about this new portal. It's like America's hottest queue because $166 billion is at stake. So we expected tens of thousands of people logging in all at once into a system that was basically set up by U.S. Customs in like a month.
And this portal was up for the challenge.
There were some glitches, but they seem to get sorted pretty quickly. I talked to Alfred Mai. His company's called ASM Games. It makes family card games. And every penny he has paid in tariffs has now been overturned by the Supreme Court. So he's owed just over $160,000. And I had asked him to record the audio of his experience this morning.
It is currently 7:17 a.m. Pacific time, and I am going to try to log into the CAPE system.
His recording ended up sounding like, someone filing their taxes. Here's a form, here's a template, confirm this, confirm that. Altogether, it took him about 5 minutes to submit his claim. That's for 17 shipments he's had from China.
I guess I'll hold my breath until I actually see the money deposited into my bank account, but so far, everything seems to be pretty straightforward and simple.
Folks like him who came prepared with all the documentation, who knew their way around the customs system, it took them minutes to file their claims. And now they're told it could be 2 to 3 months before they actually get the refund.
And you say that's how it went for people who knew their way around the system. So what about everybody else?
Right. So first I want to clarify actually that we're now just in the initial phase of tariff refunds. So not everyone qualifies quite yet. But to your question, I've talked to a few small business owners who do qualify but are nowhere near ready to even apply. This morning on Morning Edition, we heard from a business owner who has a technical error on her account, and she spent 4 hours on hold with U.S. Customs last week, hoping for help and could not reach anyone. I have talked to a few business owners who can't even log in. Many of them have never had to handle their customs paperwork. They've relied on brokers, for example. And now they're finding the bureaucratic legwork quite hefty and time-consuming on top of all of the other things they have to do to run a business.
Right. Okay. So what about people like you and me? What about shoppers? We paid these higher prices. So are we getting refunds?
Yeah, this will be a tricky thing to watch because untangling to what extent shoppers carried the tariff burden is quite difficult. In some cases, we did see companies charging a direct tariff fee, so shoppers who paid that might argue for their own refunds. Now, legally, companies are not obliged to do that, but they might. We are also already seeing class action lawsuits against some big companies, which have so far included FedEx, Costco. FedEx says it will share its refunds with customers, and Costco CEO said the company would return the value to shoppers through lower prices. But for most businesses, especially smaller ones, tariff costs are complicated. A lot of them absorbed the extra tax. They might have laid off staff. They might have stopped paying themselves salaries, stopped selling some of their products. Or if they did hike the prices, was it just because of tariffs or the cost of gas or insurance or electric bills? This is an interesting standoff. President Trump set illegal tariffs, but now they're pitting customers versus retailers.
NPR's Alina Selyuk, thank you.
Thank you.
2 tenuous ceasefires are hovering over life in the Middle East right now. In Iran, the U.S. and Iran are both giving mixed signals, negotiating and also trading fire ahead of a ceasefire set to expire in the coming days. At the same time, a temporary ceasefire in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah is still holding. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf is reporting on all of it from Tyre in southern Lebanon. Hey, Kat.
Hey, Scott.
So there's a lot to talk about here. Let's start with where things stand with the U.S. and Iran. What is the possibility of further talks between the two right now?
Yeah, there's been a lot of back and forth about who might attend possible talks between the U.S. and Iran and Islamabad and Pakistan. President Trump said he is sending a delegation to the talks, but as of now, Iran has not confirmed that it will be participating, even with that commitment from the U.S. And these talks are crucial for furthering this ceasefire between the U.S., Israel, and Iran, which was only supposed to last for 2 weeks and is set to run out on Wednesday here, local time.
And we've seen a lot of activity leading up to that moment. We've seen it playing out, especially in the Strait of Hormuz in recent days, as Iran exerted control of it again. The U.S. continuing its blockade on Iranian ports. So what is the latest of all of that?
Basically, the U.S. is blocking the transit of Iranian cargo ships in international waters around Iran, as Iran is blocking most ships from passing through the strait. Over the weekend, Iran's military fired at several ships in the strait, and then yesterday, the U.S. stopped and seized an Iranian-flagged vessel in the Arabian Sea. CENTCOM says the commercial ship failed to comply with repeated U.S. warnings over a 6-hour period as it sailed in the sea toward Iran. President Trump says the U.S. Marines now have custody of that vessel. Iran has vowed retaliation for that.
And then there's the state of things in Lebanon, where you are right now. The temporary ceasefire there is intertwined with the ceasefire between the U.S. and Israel and Iran.
Yeah, it's all pretty complicated with these two wars happening concurrently and separate rounds of peace talks also happening concurrently, yet they are really closely interlinked. You know, Iran had said it wouldn't continue peace talks with the U.S. unless a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah and Lebanon was in place. So last week, President Trump helped make that happen. And now we're on day 4 of a 10-day ceasefire here. And despite some instances of violence, that ceasefire agreement does seem to be holding. And it does seem like further talks between Israel and Lebanon will be happening too. The State Department says there will be a second round of ambassador-level talks in Washington later this week.
Tell me more about what you're seeing and hearing and reporting in southern Lebanon.
Yeah, so I'm in Tyre. That's a southern city on the Mediterranean Sea that's been heavily bombarded by Israeli strikes during the last few weeks. You know, this time last week, it would have been really pretty dangerous to be here. And now, despite, you know, the heavy destruction throughout the city, things are calm. People are cautiously out and walking around. A few restaurants are operating, that kind of thing. But people here do very much feel like if the ceasefire between the U.S., Israel, and Iran falls through, this one almost certainly will as well. I spoke to 64-year-old Mohammed Wezani earlier today. He was standing next to a pile of rubble that had been an apartment building here in Tyre, right on the sea. He said his 30-year-old nephew was killed here by an Israeli strike in the last minutes before the ceasefire went into effect just a few days ago. We asked the Israeli military about that specific strike and haven't gotten a response yet. But when I asked Wezani what he thinks about the ceasefire, here's what he told me. He said he's nervous and doesn't think it will last. It could be that these few days are the calm ones before it all starts up again.
That is NPR's Kat Lonsdorf in Tyre in southern Lebanon. Kat, thank you so much for your reporting.
Thanks, Scott.
Time now for My Unsung Hero, our series from the team at the Hidden Brain podcast. My Unsung Hero tells the stories of people whose kindness left a lasting impression on someone else. Today's story comes from Everett Miller. When Everett was about 15, he was living with friends and relatives, sleeping on couches. The only real stability in his life was his grandmother.
She would come pick me up wherever I was living on 3-day weekends or breaks from school, and I would go to her little apartment with her and hang out with her. And she was the person that I admired the most. Well, during that difficult time, one of the things that I had unfortunately started doing is that I had started shoplifting. Well, on that day in the mall, my granny sitting on the bench, me out looking at stores, I went into a store that had band t-shirts. If you grew up in the 80s and 90s, you'll remember this, but it was a Spencer's Gifts. Well, I found a band t-shirt that I wanted for the band Rage Against the Machine, and I decided that I was going to steal it. And so I crouched down behind a clothing rack, and I started to roll up that t-shirt, and I was getting ready to stuff it in my pants. And as I was doing that, a teenage girl, probably just a couple years older than me, crouched down beside me and whispered to me, "Don't do it, man. It's not worth it. The tone of her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't judgmental. It was caring. And then she looked at me and she kept her eyes on me until I unrolled the t-shirt. And then I stood up and I paid for it and went and found my granny on the bench she was sitting on and told her I was ready to leave. I don't know who that teenage girl was. I don't know why she cared so much. All I know is that whoever she was, the fact that she whispered that to me secretly kept me from making a terrible mistake. And had I stolen that shirt, I almost certainly would have gotten caught. And the police would have gone and found my granny, and I would have embarrassed her and disappointed her. And she was the only person who I respected that much and loved that much at that time in my life. And I would have had to live with what I had done to her for the rest of my life. And so whoever that teenage girl was, I've thought of her every day, and I'm still thankful to her. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you to my unsung hero.
Everett Miller lives in Stillwater, Oklahoma. His grandmother's name was Colleen Miller. You can find more stories of unsung heroes and learn how to submit your own at hiddenbrain.org.
Support for My Unsung Hero comes from Viking, committed to exploring the world in comfort, offering small ship experiences with a shore excursion included in every port and programs designed for cultural enrichment. Learn more at Viking.com.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Saudi Arabia is spending billions to support Paramount Skydance's takeover of Warner Brothers Discovery. This will also probably help the Saudis politically by staying on the right side of President Trump.
Getting close to people like the Ellisons, who are going to be buying Warner Brothers. They're very close to Trump and his family.
More on that story coming up from All Things Considered on Radio IQ.
This is Radio IQ News Director David Seidel inviting you to discover Virginia on Demand. This free weekday podcast is a short collection of the day's news and featured stories from Radio IQ and our partners across the state. Hear the latest in politics, culture, and other highlights every morning before you get your day started. Listen to Virginia on Demand on our website, that's radioiq.org, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Support from Radio IQ comes from Open Studios Tour of Roanoke, a self-guided tour of 42 artists and 14 studio locations across 6 city neighborhoods this weekend from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Map and information at openstudiostours.roanoke.com.
And by Energy Check, offering attic, crawl space, and basement repairs, serving the New River Valley since 2007. Information at wecheckenergy.com.
A tractor-trailer crash in Petersburg to report at this hour. It's on I-95 northbound, mile marker 52.5 in the city of Petersburg. The north left shoulder, left lane, center lane, all closed and traffic backups are approximately 3.5 miles. Again, that is the scene of a tractor-trailer crash in the city of Petersburg on I-95 north, mile marker 52.5.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Fidelity Investments. A dedicated advisor can help build a comprehensive wealth plan. Learn more at fidelity.com/wealth. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC. And from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, RWJF is a national philanthropy working toward a future where health is no longer a privilege, but a right. Learn more at rwjf.org. This is NPR.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Juana Summers.
And I'm Scott Detrow. Imagine having a robot around your house to do things like laundry or make your bed. Some scientists say they have made a key breakthrough that would allow robots to figure out these tasks on their own. But this raises big questions about how much risk comes with letting robots be in charge of their own learning. NPR's Katie Riddle has more.
For years, robotic scientist Pragya Gupta has been dreaming up the perfect robot.
I personally want the robot to make me a coffee.
With his engineering and science colleagues, says Gupta, people stay at the lab all hours. They drink a lot of coffee. He'd like to be able to give his robot specific directions.
A little bit of sugar, a bit more creamer, stuff like that, then, that would be a dream come true.
It's not just his dream. There's a slew of startups full of engineers trying to develop robots that could do things like unload a dishwasher or sort packages at a warehouse. Humans have been able to teach robots to do all kinds of specific tasks, but it's hard to teach them how to learn things. Gupta likes to explain this difference with a tennis metaphor.
Imagine that, there's a tennis academy and there's the instructor with some people who are there to learn tennis.
The instructor demonstrates how to hit a backhand. Most people can learn it eventually. Robots could also potentially learn to hit a backhand, but then something changes. The opponent moves, the light shifts. A person can adjust their backhand to accommodate these changes. The robots, not so much. They can't adapt like humans.
It's very difficult to transfer this behavior from human to all the robots.
That is until now, says Gupta. He and his colleagues have just published a paper in the journal Science Robotics about a new way of teaching robots. They've used machine learning, which is a kind of AI, to help robots adjust their movements based on their own physical abilities and limitations. They demonstrate their work in this video. It shows robots with a single arm attached to a base.
The way forward is robots learning from humans and transferring those skills across different designs.
In the video, an instructor picks up a ball and throws it into a small container. Robots watch, then they pick up the ball and throw the ball into the container as well, adjusting for their own position and very non-human bodies.
This opens the door to flexible, easily upgradable robot fleets.
Gupta says we're likely years away from our own personal baristas, but this development introduces some thorny questions. Like, if this robot can adjust and improve upon its own behavior, does that make it self-aware or even conscious?
It looks like this robot is capable of doing some very impressive feats of learning, but that doesn't mean something has full-blown consciousness or inner awareness or is a self in the sense that biological beings have it.
Susan Schneider studies AI at Florida Atlantic University. She points out that this robot doesn't feel things. That's a critical distinction between humans and robots.
Consciousness is the felt quality of experience. So when you sip your morning espresso shot, when you see the rich hues of the sunset, when you have a headache, it feels like something from the inside to be you.
The robot is feeling none of these things, even if it knows how to teach itself to improve. But this lack of feeling introduces a new issue. If there's no consciousness, is there morality? What's to keep someone from teaching the robot how to hurt someone?
It immediately raises alarm bells in, any AI safety researcher's mind.
The researchers on this project are including safety protocols to ensure that robots can't hurt people. But even they acknowledge it's a risk. Susan Schneider says this moment is an inflection point in how robots will evolve with AI.
It's a very exciting time, and we just don't know where it's headed.
The robots that emerge in the next 5 to 10 years, says Susan Schneider, could be life-changing for good or not. Katie Riddle, NPR News.
Support for All Tech Considered comes from the George Lucas Educational Foundation, creator of Edutopia. For 35 years, sharing what works in schools today and working to inspire new ways to learn tomorrow. More at edutopia.org.
In the 2024 presidential election, President Trump carried the Catholic vote by a 12-point margin. That's according to a report by the Pew Research Center. He also secured more votes than he did in 2020 among voters who attend religious services. To find out how these voters are thinking now after a recent dispute between the president and Pope Leo, we headed to a Sunday Mass in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, a crucial swing state. Carmen Russell-Sluchansky of member station WHYY reports.
It's Sunday Mass at St. Michael the Archangel Catholic Church in Levittown, Pennsylvania. Parishioners here are following the reports of a dispute between President Donald Trump and Pope Leo XIV. After the pontiff criticized U.S. attacks on Iran, Trump called the Pope weak on crime and terrible for foreign policy, a rare public clash between a U.S. president and the Vatican. Some here, like Mike Bali, say they are disappointed by Trump's criticisms of the Pope.
I think it's very inappropriate for him to talk to the Pope like that. I mean, come on, have some respect.
Bali voted for Trump in 2016, but says he soon became disappointed with the president and voted for Democrats in the last two elections.
He never says anything positive. It's always something negative.
His fellow parishioner Bob Gabriel voted for Trump in 2024 and thinks Pope Leo was the one out of line.
I respect the Pope and it all. But in some of his political comments, I don't think are thought out completely.
Gabriel, who has been attending St. Michael since 1969, says he still supports the president and the decision to bomb Iran.
I think President Trump is doing what he has to do to keep us safe. The ones over there with the nuclear bombs, if they have them, we're all in trouble.
St. Michael's is in Bucks County, currently represented by a practicing Catholic, Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick is one of the most vulnerable Republican members of Congress going into the 2026 midterms. He often walks a tightrope between supporting the president's platform and vocally pushing back at times. Fitzpatrick's office did not respond to a request for comment, but last week he released a statement saying that he condemned the president's comments, calling them a sacrilegious insult. Kelsey Reinhardt, president of Catholic Vote, a conservative political action group, understands that's how a lot of her community is feeling.
Donald Trump has done enormous things for Catholics and religious liberty in this country, but picking a fight with the spiritual leader of 1.3 billion Catholics in those terms was surprising, shocking, disappointing.
Reinhardt urged Catholics to reject the idea they have to choose sides. Her group endorsed Trump 2 years ago. Now she thinks it's too soon to know if this spat will lead to a shift in political support.
Are Catholics going to remain in the coalition? That's a question of policies often, not just personality. And I think that that's one that remains to be seen right now.
But back at St. Michael's, Cassandra Thornton says she's becoming disillusioned with Republicans because of Trump's attacks.
I think he crossed the line. I voted for him in 2024, and I was like, I think he's going to make a good difference, But after when I saw that, I just kind of lost all respect to what he was kind of preaching for America. He kind of went the wrong way, went south.
She says the president's recent comments may affect how she'll vote in the congressional election in November, but also acknowledge it's still too early to decide. It may be with people like Thornton in mind that Trump is expected to participate in a Bible reading on Tuesday, with the midterms still months away. Carmen Russell-Sluchansky for NPR News, Levittown, Pennsylvania.
This is NPR News.
The first season of the Netflix series Beef followed two characters whose traffic altercation spirals into one revenge plot after another. 3 years later, season 2 has a whole new cast of characters and all new beef.
This season is a more passive-aggressive beef.
My conversation with the creator of the show on the next Morning Edition from NPR News.
Weekday mornings from 5 to 9 on Radio IQ.
Support for Radio IQ comes from Carilion Clinic Cardiovascular Institute, assisting patients with the goal of a return to everyday life. More information at carillionclinic.org/CVI.
And from the Wintergreen Music Festival, with July performances including classical, jazz, bluegrass, and more. Held at the Mountaintop Resort and surrounding partner venues across the region. Tickets available at wintergreenmusic.org.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Scott Detrow.
And I'm Juana Summers. Saudi Arabia is a big player in the proposed mega merger between Skydance and Warner Brothers Discovery.
It's part of a broader investment strategy.
This all helps the Saudis curry favor, helps them be on the right side of Donald Trump, which can only help them further down the line on political matters.
Now News.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Louise Schiavone. With midterm elections closing in, a closely watched redistricting effort is unfolding tomorrow in the state of Virginia. As NPR's Amy Lopez reports, the proposal to give the state's Democrat-controlled legislature temporary power to change Virginia's congressional map may or may not affect which political party ultimately benefits.
Voters there are weighing in on a ballot measure that was put before them by Virginia's Democratic-led legislature that would essentially allow lawmakers to circumvent the state's independent redistricting commission. They're basically asking voters for permission to redraw the state's congressional map and potentially draw up to 4 more seats that could favor Democrats this fall.
A national redistricting battle began last summer when Texas Republican lawmakers redrew their state's congressional map to favor Republicans at President Trump's urging. The U.S. says it has attacked another boat in the Caribbean that it says was trafficking drugs. NPR's Ada Peralta reports the strikes have accelerated in the past couple of weeks.
Since the strikes began in September of last year, the U.S. has killed 182 people in 50 different strikes. That's according to a tracker by the Washington Office on Latin America. This month alone, the U.S. has conducted 5 strikes in the Pacific, killing at least 14 people. U.S. Southern Command says the latest strike happened in the Caribbean and killed 3 men. The U.S. says the boat was, quote, engaged in narco-trafficking operations, but provided no evidence for that assertion. The Trump administration is facing a lawsuit by the family of 2 Trinidadian men who were presumed killed by the U.S. strikes. The ACLU, which is working on behalf of the families, says the strikes amount to extrajudicial killings. Ada Peralta, NPR News, Mexico City.
On Wall Street at the close, the Dow held on to most of its Friday gains, closing at 49,442. The Nasdaq was off 64 points. This is NPR News in Washington.
For Radio IQ News, I'm Craig Wright. After years of trying, Democrats in Virginia's legislature passed bills that will create 2 new state benefit programs, paid family leave and paid sick leave. Both work similar to the Commonwealth's unemployment program, guaranteeing paid time off when an emergency strikes. But as Brad Kuttner found out, the program isn't free.
I'm feeling great. I mean, it's my 3rd time.
That's Arlington Senator Barbara Favola celebrating after getting only minor tweaks from the governor on her legislation to create a new paid sick leave program in Virginia. That and a new paid family medical leave program will arguably be the newest state benefits in Virginia since the expansion of Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act in 2019. That means, after their respective start dates, full and part-time Virginians, subject to some eligibility requirements, will get 5 paid sick days and up to 12 weeks paid family leave. The programs act like state-run insurance benefits, with paid family leave collecting about 0.5% split between employee and employer every paycheck. That's $9 every 2 weeks if you're making $72,000 a year. Paid sick accrues over time, with 1 hour off every 30 hours worked, maxing out at 40 hours a year. Derek Max with the Conservative Jefferson Forum said both benefits are too broad and amount to taxes.
It doesn't just cover medical leave, it covers military leave, it covers violence, abuse, it covers not just your spouse and your kids and your grandkids, which is also one of them, but it counts anybody that you consider like family for you to care for.
But Fairfax Senator Jennifer Boysko, who authored the paid family medical leave bill, noted 13 other states have similar programs and they're popular with the public.
I think it's a pro-business, it is a pro-family, it is a pro-human value.
They might not be as popular with businesses, though. A recent survey of Richmond local businesses found 21% said it would increase costs or administrative burden. In Richmond, I'm Brad Kuttner.
Changes to federal Medicaid rules could make it tough for some Virginia hospitals, according to several recent studies.
Rural hospitals tend to be more at risk because they just traditionally operate on a thinner margin than urban hospitals.
It's a complicated mix of taxes, patients, and politics. Fred Eccles and Cardinal News reporter Emily Schabaker take a look at the landscape of rural hospitals. Their discussion on the way in just 9 minutes. Part of All Things Considered for your Monday afternoon on listener-supported public radio, Radio IQ. For Radio IQ News, I'm Craig Wright.
Support for NPR comes from this station. And from Easy Cater, a workplace food platform dedicated to making it easy for organizations to order food from a wide variety of restaurants, set up employee meal programs, and manage food spend at easycater.com. And from your part-time controller, specializing in nonprofit accounting and committed to supporting nonprofits with financial management services such as budgeting and forecasting. YPTC.com/NPR.
It's All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Scott Detrow.
And I'm Juana Summers. Canada's strong ties to the U.S. have become a weakness. Those are the words of Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney in a video address to the nation on Sunday. In another part of the program, we'll dig into Canada's perspective in more detail. But for now, we want to take a few minutes to look at the U.S.-Israel war with Iran and how President Trump's increasingly chaotic messaging about the ceasefire and where things go next is affecting the standing of the U.S. globally. To do that, we've called up Richard Haass. He was principal advisor to Secretary of State Colin Powell during the George W. Bush administration and President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations. Welcome back.
Good to be with you.
Richard, I want to start, if you can, just with what Carney said. Were you surprised?
Well, it's been some time in coming. I think that the Canadians have essentially made the decision that they need to, how would I put it, diversify their economic portfolio and distance themselves from the United States, by the way, not just economically, but strategically. That, it's really interesting. Historically, the idea when you had close ties with someone, it would be seen as a sign of mutual advantage. And Canada came to see it as a sign of Canadian disadvantage.
Is a relationship with the U.S. a strategic weakness now for many of our longtime allies?
I wouldn't call it quite a strategic weakness, but the fact that they are asking questions about it tells you all you need to know. Up to now, until recently, it was seen as the more sensible, by far the preferred way to go, heavy reliance on the United States. We were seen as reliable, dependable, and that we had their best interests at heart. And what I think you see now is two things. One is the United States is no longer seen as either reliable or predictable. And secondly, in part because of the widespread use of tariffs, economic proximity, if you will, to the United States has been seen as a source of vulnerability. So I think around the world, our national security advisors, prime ministers, foreign ministers, and the like are rethinking their relationship with the United States and asking themselves, how can we put fewer eggs in the American basket economically and strategically? And what are our alternatives? How self-reliant can we become? What other trading partners can we find, and so forth?
Let me put that question to you. If the U.S. is increasingly being seen as unreliable, what alternatives do many of our longtime allies have?
Well, economically, they find other trading partners. Strategically, they've really only got three choices. They can become more self-reliant, build up their own military might. Some might actually one day, sooner rather than later, think about nuclear arms. Secondly, they can try to find new strategic partners. The Europeans, you see some of that going on, or greater, moving closer to one another. Thirdly, they may decide they have to appease or assuage, I'll use a more gentle word, some near enemy, and they need to come to better terms with it. It would be very interesting, for example, in the Middle East, whether once things, if and when they're settled, whether several countries there say, well, we can't rely on the United States nearly as much as we used to what extent do we have to cozy up to Iran and turn to avoid a new outbreak of fighting?
I mean, there are a couple of adages that stick in my mind, one being crazy like a fox. So is there a strategic value in keeping folks on their toes? In other words, does President Trump increase the likelihood that the Iranians will come to an agreement if they're just not sure what's going to happen next?
I would not think so. Iran has showed it has tremendous resilience. It's able to take a punch. My guess is quite a few in the Iranian leadership, and let's just posit it's very hard to know exactly the composition and nature of the new Iranian leadership. But I think quite a few of them have decided time is more on their side than the United States, given economic and political pressures. So when the president threatens them, and these threats have come and gone, I don't think they take them that seriously. What they do take seriously, and it's probably our greatest form of leverage, and it's the reason over a month ago I advocated or introduced the idea of a blockade, is the Iranian economy is their Achilles heel. It was their weakest feature before the war. The war has made things worse, and that's where we can get some leverage.
This war started with the U.S. and Israel striking Iran. Then after the war started, Trump began publicly asking allies to get involved. From your view, how different is this approach from how prior administrations have assembled coalitions for a war, especially when we're talking about a war that might have predictably large disruptions to the global economy?
There's an old saying in diplomacy, if you want people involved in the landings, you've got to have them involved in the takeoff. And we violated that adage. We didn't consult with them. We didn't get them on board. Plus, particularly the European allies, they're not all that directly dependent on Middle Eastern energy. Plus, this is outside the NATO treaty area. So this is much more of a discretionary operation at best.
I do want to ask you about NATO. I mean, throughout this war, we've heard President Trump ridicule our allies. He's called UK warships toys. He's referred to NATO, among other things, as a paper tiger. He's called our European allies cowards, his words. Where do you think NATO goes from here?
NATO's in bad shape. People say, can the president unilaterally take the United States out of it? It doesn't matter that much. NATO's been reduced to something of a shell. There's more form there than substance. I speak to European leaders a lot. I don't know too many who believe that the United States will be there for them if push were to ever come to shove. So NATO still exists, but it's almost like your appendix. It's not doing a whole lot of work anymore.
We've also heard President Trump criticize Japan, South Korea, and Australia for not helping the U.S. and Iran. Where does this war and the president's messaging about it leave our alliances in the Pacific region?
They're actually much more affected by the energy shutdown, and a lot of them, particularly Australia, doesn't have large storage capabilities, so they're hurting. But again, the Australian Prime Minister has gone on record saying he opposes this war. They weren't asked about it. So this is a real breakdown of America's alliances, and I think, again, you'll see in Asia, as in Europe, our partners, our allies, looking for alternative arrangements. Some of them may, for example, move economically closer to China. Some of them might be thinking, particularly in South Korea, you're going to have a serious conversation there about nuclear weapons. Some 70 to 80% of the South Korean people seem to support that in polls, and they have to face both China and North Korea. So what you're beginning to see are some of the tectonic plates of history are moving, where the era of American influence is waning, largely by our own decision, and countries that have depended on us are beginning to look for alternatives.
Last thing, and we've got just about a minute left here. I wonder, this chaotic messaging, what do you think the effect overall has been on how the U.S. is viewed on the world stage?
I don't think it helps. Great powers should not be erratic, should not be inconsistent. Deterrence of your foes depends upon consistency. So does reassurance of your allies. So, by the way, does your ability to negotiate. So when the United States keeps changing its talking points, when we project confusion, I don't think it builds any confidence in us. It doesn't reassure, it doesn't deter. So I think it actually works against the goal of having a successful negotiated end to this conflict.
That is Richard Haas, a senior counselor with Centerview Partners, an international investment banking advisory firm. He's also president emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
For Radio IQ News, I'm Craig Wright. 3 recent national studies have found as many as 10 mostly rural Virginia hospitals at risk of closure under new federal Medicaid rules. While no closures are seen as imminent, research suggests the state could lose a large share of its current federal Medicaid funding over the next 5 years. Emily Schaubecker is covering this story for Cardinal News, and she talked about it with Fred Eccles.
Emily, what does the term at risk actually mean?
In these studies, we've seen several of them kind of come out over the last year or so, and they usually look at operating margins. They'll take a period of time and average that operating margin, and if it's in the negatives, then that hospital is defined as at risk, meaning that it is slightly more vulnerable to changes in the market. Rural hospitals tend to be more at risk because they just traditionally operate on a thinner margin than urban hospitals.
But it should not be taken as a prediction that this hospital is about to close.
Right. It's incredibly difficult to predict if a hospital is going to close down.
At the center of all this is something called the Provider Assessment Tax. What is it, and how do new federal rules affect it?
The Provider Assessment Tax is a state-imposed tax on hospitals. When hospitals pay that tax, it goes into the statewide Medicaid funding pot. And the more money that's in that pot means that the more money that the state can draw down from the federal government for its Medicaid funding. In Virginia, we have a 6% provider assessment tax. That money is then redistributed to the hospitals in the form of reimbursement for Medicaid services. And this is a practice that almost every state in the country engages in. It's not unusual, it's very common. But in the federal spending bill, there's a new provision that states are not allowed to impose any more provider assessment taxes. And states that already have these taxes in place will have to gradually reduce that down to about 3% between now and 2031. If that all comes to fruition, Virginia could potentially lose $2 billion annually. That's billion with a B, that's used to kind of support these rural hospitals. And people need to be prepared for a change, but it doesn't mean that hospitals will close tomorrow.
Clearly, rural hospitals are more likely to be considered at risk. Why? What makes them more vulnerable?
So rural hospitals serve a larger proportion of Medicaid patients. Rural areas are usually more economically depressed. And so they are really relying on that Medicaid reimbursement from the state. And that's part of the reason why, they have these low operating margins, is because that reimbursement still falls short of the actual cost of delivering care. So every time they treat a Medicaid patient, they're probably losing a certain amount of money.
Emily, this looks like one of those situations where the only thing that's certain is uncertainty. From where we are now, things could go in many different directions.
I think it's important to note, I had a great quote from one of my sources in this story who said the answer is somewhere in the middle, where we need to be prepared for changes, but also, it's not a guarantee that these hospitals will close down. There's also likely that we'll have different political leadership between now and when all of these changes are fully rolled out. And so we could see some mitigation. We could see some things change. It's not as dramatic as some of these headlines that say at risk, and it seems like the hospitals are just absolutely going to close. But there's a lot of time between now and when that actually happens.
Emily Schabacher reports for cardinalnews.org. I'm Fred Eccles.
Cardinal News is a nonprofit online independent news organization covering Southwest and Southside Virginia. The war with Iran continues to take a toll on American farmers.
We really need this to be resolved soon, and for the oil and energy markets to try and stabilize.
More from North Dakota, where high prices for diesel and fertilizer are pushing many farmers to the financial brink. That story on the way in just about 15 minutes, just after the top of the hour news from All Things Considered on Radio IQ.
It resonates with you. A story on Radio IQ that changed your perspective. A conversation that helped you understand the world better. And yes, the organizations that made it all possible. Corporate support isn't about shouting louder. It's about being present in the moments that matter to you. If your organization wants to make its mark where it counts, email us at corporatesupport@vt.edu.
Support for Radio IQ is provided by the Virginia Education Association, the Commonwealth's Union of Public Education Professionals, a union of educators building better public schools for a better future. Online at veanea.org. And from Across the Way Productions, presenting Floyd Fest, July 22nd through 26th, featuring Tedeschi Trucks Band, My Morning Jacket, and more. Information at floydfest.com.
Mostly clear and cold tonight, leading to widespread areas of frost and freezing. Lows will bottom out in the mid-20s to 36 for Wise. Sunshine for Tuesday, a little breezy, and will rebound just a bit warmer, as highs will climb into the mid-60s and lower 70s. Partly cloudy on Wednesday with some spotty showers and storms possible. Highs on Wednesday will be in the upper 60s to near 84 for Danville. It's All Things Considered on Radio IQ.
From NPR News, this is All Things Considered. I'm Juana Summers.
And I'm Scott Detrow. Powerful parties want the Paramount, Skydance, and Warner Brothers Discovery merger to succeed. And no, we're not talking about President Trump or the Ellison family. Several Persian Gulf wealth funds have pledged a total of $24 billion for Paramount's attempted takeover, including Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. According to the latest cover story in The Hollywood Reporter, this is part of a broader push by the country to curry favor with Trump, buy influence in Washington, and also keep young Saudi eyes and minds on the screens, not on questions of human rights. Scott Roxborough wrote the story and joins us now. Welcome to All Things Considered.
Oh, thanks very much for having me.
I want to start with the current moment because typically an investment like this, you can think about it as a form of soft power, right? A way to burnish a country's global reputation. And that's going on here. But there's also this specific dynamic right now that you report on of this has a lot to do with Saudi Arabia's relationship with President Trump. So how does this effort tie into that goal?
Yeah, I think getting close to people like the Ellisons, who are going to be buying Warner Brothers, they're very close to Trump and his family. This all helps the Saudis curry favor, helps them be on the right side of Donald Trump, which can only help them further down the line on political matters.
You know, I want to talk about the implications of this deal, but I think if you zoom out a little bit, the Saudi Arabian government and this investment fund has been making all sorts of investments in the last few years. And there was a report from the Financial Times recently that it might be actually pulling back from one of them, Live Golf, which was set up as this potential rival to PGA Golf. Now, NPR hasn't independently confirmed that, but if that's the case, what do you think that tells you about the broader goals and strategy of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's efforts here to spend this money in this way?
I think you can broadly say the goals that Mohammed bin Salman had when he set out his plans, his investment plans, were sort of threefold. One was what we mentioned about this sort of soft power investment, but I think more important ones were to move Saudi Arabia away from its dependence on oil and gas revenues, and the other was to really open up the country inside to sort of liberalize its cultural offerings, if I can put it that way, to make the sort of local audience, give them things to do and not get involved in sort of political disruption. And the oil price being what it has been over the last number of years, obviously it's been going up recently because of the Iran war, but the oil price has been quite low, which has not allowed Saudis to invest as much as they would like to, or to get the sort of returns that they would like to. Because of that, it seems that the Saudi government might be curtailing a bit of their ambitions.
And then on the geopolitical front, you write, quote, in Hollywood and in Washington, few believe that $24 billion won't come with strings attached, particularly for a deal that will include CNN, HBO, and a film catalog with rights to Batman, Superman, and Harry Potter. What do you think those strings could look like?
Yes, it'll be interesting to see. A caveat here is that the investment that the Saudi Arabian Sovereign Wealth Fund has made for the Warner Brothers acquisition does not give them a controlling stake of Warner Brothers on paper, so they're not going to have seats on the board. They're not going to have any official control over what Warner Brothers does or says. However, these type of investments usually do come with some form of subtle coercion. Yeah. It's similar to what happened over a decade ago when there was a lot of Chinese investment in Hollywood. We've started to see a move away from Hollywood portrayals of the Chinese as being the baddies and a more sort of positive image. And that wasn't directly an influence that the Chinese government or the Chinese investors were having on production companies, but more a general feel of, well, if the money's coming from there, we should probably meet them halfway when it comes to how we depict them.
I mean, earlier you laid out all of the different goals of these big investments. And it seems to me that looking at the early returns, all of those goals are being met. I mean, is this being viewed as successful so far?
I guess it depends on how you measure success. I think if you talk about the goal of moving the Saudi economy away from its dependence on oil, that hasn't been that successful. If you talk about sort of soft power, when I talk to people in Europe, when I talk to Americans about Saudi Arabia, they still associate the country mainly with human rights abuses and with...
Welcome back to our reconvened session of Roanoke City Council 2 o'clock session. We are continuing in our agenda under items recommended for action, and we're going to go to 7B, which is the acceptance of opioid settlement claims against the manufacturers. These are Group 6 remnant defendants. We have one measure, a resolution. I need a motion and second on the resolution.
Move the resolution.
Second. Thank you, Council Members Hagan and Volleson. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
A resolution approving the City of Roanoke's participation in the proposed combined settlement agreement resolving opioid-related claims against Associated Pharmacies, Inc., and American Associated Pharmacies, J.M. Smith Corporation, Louisiana Wholesale Drug Company, Inc., Morris and Dixon Company, North Carolina Mutual Wholesale Drug Company, Inc., and United Natural Foods, Inc., including its subsidiaries, SuperValue and Advantage Logistics, 6 remnant defendants, and directing the city attorney, city manager, or designee to execute the documents necessary to effectuate the city's participation in the settlement. There is one settlement agreement covering the combined settlement with the 6 remnant defendants.
Thank you. Ms. Turner, anything to add?
No comments, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments by members of council? All right, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones, Vice Mayor McGuire.
Aye.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Ms. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the resolution is adopted. Item 7C is the approval of an encroachment permit for the installation of gunshot detection devices for the Roanoke Police Department within the public right-of-way at various locations throughout the city of Roanoke. There is one measure, an ordinance for our consideration. I need a motion and a second on the ordinance.
Move the motion. Move the ordinance.
I'll second it. Or are you going to?
I can, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, council members Nash and Powers. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
An ordinance allowing the encroachment of gunshot detection devices known as Raven sensors to be installed at various locations in the public right-of-way throughout the city of Roanoke at the request of Flock Group, Inc., doing business as Flock Safety, on behalf of the Roanoke Police Department, upon certain terms and conditions, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
All right, thank you. Ms. Turner, do you have anything to add to this?
Yes, I do. Thank you. The Roanoke Police Department is seeking approval to install gunshot detection devices at various locations throughout the city of Roanoke. These devices are designed solely to detect the sound of gunfire, allowing officers to respond more quickly and accurately to incidents. This technology will help improve response times and may assist in preventing further violence. And I'd also like to bring Deputy Chief Puckett up just to give a brief overview of this new technology.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor Cobb, Vice Mayor McGuire, and all the other members of City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. What I want to start with is kind of some education pieces of what the Flock Raven system is. It is gunshot detection, and we are requesting for 75 sensors citywide. What it's not, though, is cameras. It's not capturing images. It's not capturing things like that, whether it's vehicles or people or anything like that. It's also not capturing biometrics. It's designed to specifically capture noises that they have trained to detect sounds like gunshots, illegal fireworks, sideshows, car crashes. That's what the technology is designed for. It does not actively stream anything live to the police department. What it does is it alerts us when things like that happen. With that being said, I would like to address a few other things. So it acts as a trigger when it hears these things. When it's triggered, then it starts that alert process system that notifies us of it. It's not actively recording and keeping that data until something like that happens. It's also been trained to ignore human voices. So it's not picking up and recording human voices. Again, it's picking up certain noises at certain decimal levels in order to detect whether it's gunshot or whether it's car crashes or things like that. I know that there has been some talk about Martinsville. I reached out to the command staff there at Martinsville, and there is some accurate things. One of the things that concerned them is it did only detect 8 shots when it was like 28 shots fired. And the other thing was that it did only detect or it did not detect any gunshots inside a residence. But I would say to that one, it's not designed to. It's designed for outside usage. Much like there are smoke detectors, I don't know if you guys are aware of it, that uses sensors for like national forest nationwide. And it alerts fire departments when there's the slightest hint of a forest fire. It gets them there faster instead of waiting until half the mountain burns down. So much like that, that's what we're trying to do here. I know I've been with the city for 22 years. We have seen multiple people show up at Roanoke Memorial Hospital with gunshot wounds. We were never notified until they actually reached the hospital. I can only say that I believe that time is of essence when we look at things like that, and it's very important that we can get to those localities quickly. Lots of times people don't call us, but when they do, we respond. What this will do is when people don't call us, gives us the ability to respond. With that being said, I think the last thing that I'd like to say about it is it's data driven. We did not randomly pick these 75 sensors and just put them in places that we feel were appropriate. We had our analyst team do a map of where the most active calls for service were for gunshots, and we overlaid that map with these sensors. That's how we picked the locations for that. And with that being said, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Chief. Questions from council. Mr. Volleson.
Deputy Chief Puckett, is there any cost to the city for this program?
No, it's not. We actually applied for a federal burn grant, and I think the cost is $57,000 roughly, and all that is through the grant funding.
And is this, how long do we have, if we put these in, how long are they contracted to be in, or when is the time that we can review whether we want to?
So it's a 2-year contract that we'll have that will spend those grant funds, and at that point, we'll probably look at it, I'd say 6 to 8 months out, and determine whether or not it is beneficial for us to see if we want to find additional funding from the city or perhaps find another grant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Ms. Sanchez-Jones.
Could we terminate the contract within a year, or do we have to wait for the 2 years?
So that would be a question I would have to say would be up to our legal answer. I would say it's a contract that we probably could not if they're fulfilling their end, but I'm not an attorney.
I haven't looked at that. I can take a look at it and let you know.
If we could put a clause in that if we don't think it's working out, and maybe we could do that. I'm not sure. So you're the.
No, please no comments from the audience. We appreciate you being here, but this is a discussion among council right now. All right. Mr. Nash.
I don't have a question. Well, I do actually have one question. Then I have some comments. So my first question is, what is our internal policy, and what standards, what preventions do we have to stop internal folks who want to access this system to maybe spy on their, their girlfriend or their wife who's got a new guy, or whatever the case is, and what are the consequences if they are found to be using it inappropriately, and how often do we audit the system to detect that?
So that's a great question, council member. So what I'll start with first is this particular system, the gunshot detection Raven system. It doesn't work like the flock LPRs or things like that. We don't go in and just randomly search for a gunshot noise. We don't go in and randomly search for a car crash. It alerts us when those things happen, and it saves the data for us at that point. So as far as that goes, the officers that would have access, or the civilians that would have access, would not be able to search it like that, if that makes sense. But with that being said, I do believe there is a search component, because if we respond to Roanoke Memorial Hospital, for example, and there's a gunshot wound victim there, we could go back and search then. But that would follow the same guidelines as our current flock policy follows, LPRs, and that is we have to have a criminal investigation to run that. We do a monthly audit. The supervisors audit every employee that runs it, and we look at case numbers, warrant numbers that are on file if they use it for warrant services, stolen vehicles to make sure they were correctly entered in the VSIN, and that monthly report ultimately goes to Virginia State Police for their annual report. We just met with Virginia State Police, our analyst did. They gave us some recommendations as far as tightening up the categories. Instead of letting officers put in categories that they choose, they gave us a list of categories that we've now implemented, and that's how officers will enter it. And that was just a recommendation. It's not something that's required, but we like the ability to restrict as much as we can officers using random purposes. The other thing that came out of that meeting is that they said that we are going above and beyond other localities, and they don't anticipate any issues with Roanoke City.
And my comment is, in the process of thinking about this technology and just the technologies we're beginning to use in general, it made me think back to back in February, where we had the double homicide behind Refreshing Church. And when the community members gathered, I went because I live not too far away from that area, and none of the residents heard gunshots.
Right.
Now, we know the vehicle was in the car, right? But it made me think back about my own lived experiences living in Northwest, about the amount of times I've called police saying, hey, I heard a gunshot. And they're asking me questions about where, what time, and all these things. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm in my house. I can't tell you what area it came from. Or I pull up and one of my neighbors say, hey, Fajon, did you hear the gunshots? And I'm like, no, I wasn't home last night. I didn't hear no gunshots. Did you call the police? No. Because in my community, there's still a presumption of you don't want to snitch and you don't want to call the police. Or you call the police, but they're not even going to show up. So why am I even going to bother? And so I hear the concerns, and I'm going to make sure that we are being thoughtful and deliberate, and we're asking the right questions and making sure that our legal team and you all as well are taking it very serious. But I feel that when I've communicated with my community, folks who live in Northwest, some of the things they've advocated to me was more cameras in the parks, particularly McCadden Park,
Yes.
because of a lot of the activity that goes on. They literally say, we need y'all to put cameras in the park because I don't feel safe. I want someone watching us. And you can go to the community and hear those words from them. So I just wanted to add that kind of add that opinion and add that comment to it, and say that we take the concerns very serious, and we will continue to provide the best oversight we can. And that we also, lastly, I'll say that we also have some information coming out that we're working with the Attorney General's office to put out for our community that addresses issues and concerns and valid concerns about ICE, and how our position is that we're not going to cooperate with ICE. And so that would be forthcoming fairly soon.
So, and I appreciate those comments, sir, and thank you for your support of this. But with that being said, I do want to make a point to what you said about the phone calls for shots fired. That does happen often. And when you live in a city like this, there's a lot of buildings and a lot of different structures that causes that to echo. So lots of times when we do get shots fired call, we may be able to narrow it down to a 10, 15, 20 block radius, which is a substantial distance. But with that being said, with this technology, it triangulates and pinpoints a more accurate location of where that took place. So we're hoping that technology does work, and we're hoping that instead of officers responding to a 15 block radius, we respond to the location that it happens.
Questions? Ms. Powers and then Mr. Volleson.
So thank you, Mr. Nash, for your comments. It led me to something that my son used to be a medic at the hospital, and one of the things he used to tell us is, do you know, a lot of these people could have made it, could have lived if they'd only gotten to the hospital in time. And to Mr. Nash's comment, it was that because people won't call the police.
Right.
And, you know, so many times he did make that comment to us that, you know, if they'd have gotten there sooner, they would have lived.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. I mean, when you're dealing with a serious gunshot wound, seconds matter, minutes matter, and for certain, anything longer than that matters. And we're hoping that this will reduce those minutes and those seconds to get us there faster, to get EMS there faster.
And I want to make sure I understand this and that get this. You did. It's not a camera. It only detects sound only, and that's what I've read, and that's what you guys have told us many times. It
Yes.
only detects sound.
Yes, this particular Raven system detects sound. It does not have a video camera.
Please, if I hear any more comments from the audience, I'm going to excuse everybody from the room. Continue, Deputy Chief.
So yes, what I was saying is this particular technology does not have video surveillance. It's strictly sound that it's picking up.
Mr. Volleson, did you have a question?
I just had a comment. You know, I think there's a lot that Mr. Nash is correct about. We have to do a lot of our own oversight of what's going on here with Flock and other programs like this, and they're coming out day by day.
Right.
More AI and more AI. And just want folks in Roanoke to know that we, up on this dais, take it very seriously. We ask a lot of questions. not everything is up here on the front, in front of everybody, but we ask a lot of these questions and have been advocating for, the most security that we can when it comes to sensitive data, and biometric data and any type of data. We really want data security, but we also have a city that is fighting gun violence, and like Ms. Power said, that could be the difference between having a funeral and having a welcome home party. So I think there's a couple of different aspects that we as council need to take in and say, hey, we want to make this city as safe as it can be. And right now, we have an opportunity to use a new technology with safety, privacy in place, to reduce the gun violence that we know is so ravaging our city. And so I really think that, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Other questions? Mr. Hagan.
So I have a couple of questions. You mentioned sideshows, that this would detect sideshows?
Yes. So I don't know if you guys see the news recently. I believe there's been some in the Tidewater area, and I know there's been some in New York City, I think last night. These are when vehicles come out and start to take over the street. They'll do street racing, they'll do circles and parking lots and things like that. So it does pick up that type of noise also.
Okay. And this might be a question that I have for our city attorney. Since the Fourth Amendment did come up quite a bit in public discussion and during that comment period, is there a reasonable expectation of privacy when you're talking on the street?
No.
Okay. It does raise a question there with, this is a microphone, this is possibility of picking that stuff up. There's no indication of the fact that this is trained to pick up any sort of human voices. So what happens? How can it trigger something without hearing it?
So my understanding of the technology is it's actually been taught to ignore conversation. And then it's been trained to pick up those noises that are consistent with the gunshot, the fireworks, and things like that. None of that, my understanding, is actually recorded until it picks up those alerts. Once it picks up those alerts, it would go into the database, and we will treat that the same as we treat the LPR data and ensure that it's deleted every 21 days.
And, I think you addressed this, but just for my own edification, why these specific 75 sites?
So again, what we did was we had our analysts do a map for us for the calls for service for most frequent gunshot calls, or shots fired calls is what we call it. And we took that map and we overlaid the 75 sensors that we had to try to be consistent and, for lack of better words, get the most bang for our buck. As far as if we know that shots are fired in these areas, we want to see how many we're missing and how many we can intervene with. So that's why we chose those locations.
Thank you.
Other questions? So I have two quick questions. There seems to be concern about this particular type of technology and the company. Are there other technologies that serve the same purpose that are not Flock that have been looked at?
Yes, there are multiple companies. There was a company called ShotSpotter, but it's recently changed to sound something like that. But ShotSpotter is another large company that has the exact, I won't say exact, a very similar technology that picks up on gunshot detection.
I guess I'm trying to understand why this one was chosen over others in this particular case, or if that came with the grant.
So that's a great question. The reason why we chose this is because we had already invested in some of the other Flock technologies, and this made it a single platform for us. So that's the biggest reason. The second reason is that other detection is much more expensive.
And then remember what the other question was, but I think it goes back to what Councilwoman Sanchez Jones said, which is about the legal question.
Can we terminate the contract if after a year we're not happy with it? And I'm going to look into that.
Okay, so if we let's just say hypothetically, if we adopt this today, can this be brought back to us when we have additional information to amend the contract? Or should we have that information before we vote on this, is what I'm asking, procedurally?
I think you could vote on it today, and if we find out that you can provide direction to the city manager's office not to proceed with the project if you have concerns about the ability to get out of it at our discretion.
So we could revisit it as soon as we have that information.
Absolutely.
So we have some, I'm just trying to remind us procedurally, we have some options here.
Approving it today is just one step. There's many other steps for them to actually get installed. That's not
Right.
happening
And a
tomorrow.
contract has to be signed, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? Yeah, Ms. Turner.
Just point of clarification. So, Ms. Carini, so the direction would be they would approve it with the caveat that I only sign once I hear from you?
So they could vote on the encroachment permit today only. That's what they're voting on, the specific item. And then based on what I find out about the contract, whether it has termination clauses, if we are uncomfortable with that, we can revisit that and bring that to council, advise you, brief you on what we found out, and we can proceed from there or not.
Understood.
Okay.
I'm good.
Right. So we're still, the item before us is to approve the encroachment permit.
Correct. Yes.
That's what we're voting on today. Questions? Now's the time. Councilman Wilson.
Question?
Call the question?
Oh.
Or do you have one? I'll take one more.
I have a concern about doing it that way because it would realistically have to come back to us, right? Like either way, because, right?
If you're approving the encroachment permit today, then that's, again, just one piece of this entire transaction.
We're not approving the actual contract. We're approving the encroachment abilities.
Yeah. Mm.
Again, I would call the question.
Okay. All right. Call the question, ends discussion, and we move to the vote. All right. So the vote is, the decision is to adopt. Could you read the ordinance, the title paragraph one more time for us, just to refresh our minds?
An ordinance allowing the encroachment of gunshot detection devices known as Raven sensors to be installed at various locations in the public right-of-way throughout the city of Roanoke at the request of Flock Group, Inc., doing business as Flock Safety, on behalf of the Roanoke Police Department upon certain terms and conditions, and dispensing with the second reading of this ordinance by title.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. Will you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones?
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire?
No.
Mr. Nash?
Aye.
Mr. Volleson?
Aye.
Ms. Powers? Mr. Hagan?
No.
Mayor Cobb?
Aye. And the ordinance is adopted. All right. You need to leave right now, please. Need you all to leave, please. Thank you for coming. I need you to leave as well, please. No hand signals, please. All right. All right, we're moving on to item D, amendment to the fiscal year 25 Tract 8 Engineering Design Services Contract with AECom. We have one measure, a resolution, and I need a motion and second on the resolution.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Thank you, council members Volleson and Nash. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
A resolution authorizing the city manager's issuance and execution of a contract amendment to the city's contract with AECom for the engineering design services related to the Tract 8 at RCIT project, authorizing the city manager or designee to take such actions as execute documents as may be necessary to provide for the implementation and administration and enforcement of such contract as amended.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ms. Turner, do you have anything to add to this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The awarding of this contract serves as the next vital step in transforming Track 8 into a pad-ready site that will serve as the future home of a yet-to-be-chosen industrial company. AECom has been a valuable partner on this project since its inception and has the insight and knowledge to move this project from the drawing board to reality. Thank you.
Questions or comments from members of council?
So I have a question.
Mr.
I just want
Nash.
to make sure so the increase is who's paying? Did we get a grant for the increase? Or are we paying for the increase amount of money?
Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Welcome,
Madam
Mr.
City
Nelson.
Manager, sorry.
See you.
The increase is built into the budget we already have for the grant. We had to come, and Ross, you can correct me if I get this wrong, because the increase, the contract for construction services exceeds the 25% amount for the total grant, we have to come for council approval for that. So it's already built into the budget.
Okay. So we're not going to have to go and this is money that's already we planned ahead. We said it
It's
there,
already in there.
and now everything's going according to plan.
Because it exceeds that 25% total of the whole budget, we have to come to council for approval.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones. Aye. Vice Mayor McGuire.
No.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Ms. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the resolution's adopted. Item E is the approval of the city's 2025 to 2029 consolidated plan for CDBG block grants. There's one measure, a resolution, and I need a motion and second on the resolution.
Resolution.
Second.
Councilmembers Volleson and Nash. Madam Clerk, would you read the title paragraph, please?
A resolution approving substantial amendments to the City of Roanoke's 2025 through 2029 Consolidated Plan and 2025 through 2026 Annual Plan, authorizing the city manager and the city manager's designee to execute all necessary documents required for such substantial amendments, and further authorizing the city manager or the city manager's designee to submit such amendments to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for final review and approval.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Ms. Turner, this measure and the next measure we were briefed on at the last city council meeting.
That's correct. At the April 6th meeting, we provided a briefing to go over all the different changes, specifically for the 2025-29 consolidated plan. It's for the Community Development Block Grant Program to update goals, expand eligible activities, and ensure compliance with federal requirements and the public processes.
Just so I'm clear, these are amendments. I know we're still considering the overall plan. Is that correct?
Well, the consolidated plan was approved last year. The 2025 2029 consolidated plan was approved last year. This allows us to expand eligible and include eligible activities that were not in the plan. So anytime we want to do additional projects or activities, we have to go through the citizen participation plan, which calls for a substantial amendment, and that is to advertise the different changes that we want to make, get public comment, have a public hearing, and then ultimately bring it back for your approval.
I think what I'm trying to get at is there's been additional conversation about whether or not we move forward with a next target area. Does that happen? Can you walk us through that process of clarification?
Absolutely.
Or I know Mr. Winters here as well.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. So part of the 2025-2029, there was not a specific target area that was included. At the time, as I explained, I believe, at the last meeting, we were looking at where we were relative to the Belmont Fallon target area. And I do believe in our research that there's still some things that we need to do in that area. Once we do that, we are going to look at creating an actual plan of action, which is called a community development strategy, a neighborhood strategy area for the next target area. And what we'll be able to do is once we create that plan, we'll have a clear picture of what needs to be done, what we're going to do, the year we're going to do it in, because it will be a 5-year plan, and how we move forward. Because absent of that, it really would put our funds in jeopardy if we don't have a plan of action on how we're going to move forward, because we do have expenditure deadlines, which is where we are right now. You're welcome.
Questions, comments by members of council? Ms. Powers.
This does include what you talked to us about the shovel-ready projects.
Absolutely.
Other questions? All right. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones. Vice Mayor McGuire.
No.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Ms. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye. Aye, and the resolution is adopted. Item F is the approval of the city's 2019 annual action plan to amend the Community Development Block Grant COVID CDBG CV. There's one measure, a resolution, and I need a motion and second on the resolution.
Move resolution.
Second.
Thank you, council members Nash and Powers. Madam Clerk, will you please read the title paragraph?
Yes, I will. A resolution approving certain amendments to the City of Roanoke's 2015 through 2019 Consolidated Plan through its 2019 through 2020 Annual Plan, authorizing the city manager or the city manager's designee to execute all necessary documents required for such amendments, and further authorizing the city manager or the city manager's designee to submit such amendments to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for final review and approval.
You, Ms. Turner, anything to add?
I do, thank you. The proposal to this 2019 annual action plan is to reallocate unspent funds from the CDBG coronavirus grant allocation. These changes direct remaining funds toward improvements to Loudon Park to support outdoor recreation and preparedness for future public health needs.
Any questions or discussion from members of council? All right, then Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Sanchez Jones.
Aye.
Vice Mayor McGuire.
No.
Mr. Nash.
Aye.
Mr. Volleson.
Aye.
Ms. Powers.
Aye.
Mr. Hagan.
Aye.
And Mayor Cobb.
Aye, and the resolution is adopted. Thank you. We'll turn now to Ms. Turner for any comments that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have 2 comments. William Fleming High School student athletes recently partnered with our Parks and Recreation Department to support environmental efforts along the Roanoke River Greenway at Vic Thomas Park. A group of 34 volunteers from the girls' soccer team removed over 2,000 pounds of invasive plant species, helping restore the park while staff treated the area to prevent growth. Number 2, the Public Works Transportation Division hosted its 7th annual Walk and Roll Ready Rally, bringing together more than 50 students from 10 elementary schools to build safe walking and biking skills. Held at Westside Elementary Traffic Garden, the event helped students practice road safety in a realistic setting and supported broader efforts like Walk and Roll to School Day and the city's Slow Your Roll campaign. Those conclude my comments for today.
Thank you. We received on the dais a report back form, and so I want to, who am I calling on for? Janelle. Ms. Few, welcome.
Good evening. Mayor Cobb, members of council, City Manager Turner. The community engagement team and members of staff responded to residents who shared concerns during the March 16 and April 6 meetings. At the March 16 meeting, 14 parents and teachers expressed concerns about the proposed budget. 2 public school advocates shared similar concerns at the April 6 meeting. Each speaker received acknowledgement that their concerns were noted. During the March 16 meeting, a resident of the Grandin Court neighborhood brought concerns regarding a deed extension for the Fishburne Park project. Her concerns were shared with Permit Center and planning staff, who notified the resident that there are no current compliance issues with the project, and they provided her with documentation establishing that the property owners have until March 31st, 2027 to achieve substantial completion of construction. 2 local public transportation users spoke during the March 16 meeting regarding public transit funding and access to sidewalks and bus stops, especially in times of severe weather. Both speakers received an acknowledgement that their comments were noted. A member of Friends of Evans Spring spoke on March 16 in support of preserving Evans Spring. Ms. Delasky, Executive Assistant to Mayor Cobb, is working directly with the resident to address his concerns.
Can I just pause there for a minute? That's under the title of Washington Park Cottage. I want to make sure that it was it specific to Evans Spring, or was this someone from Friends of Evans Spring speaking about the cottage? Just trying to be clear on that.
It's my understanding they were a representative of Friends of Evans Spring, but they were speaking on behalf of
Cottage.
the cottage.
Okay. So I think the only correction we might make there is preserving the cottage. Thank you for that clarification.
Sorry about that. A member of the Architectural Review Board shared concerns during the April 6 meeting about delays in receiving certificates of appropriateness for home repairs in the Historic District. Planning Department staff, who will provide an update about the delay at the upcoming ARB work session, has shared this information with the board member. And finally, a city resident spoke on February 17 about health concerns resulting from a tree near her home. Staff was able to support cooperation between this resident and members of the community who had the invasive tree removed. Staff also supported her efforts to coordinate home repairs.
Mayor, a follow-up question on one of these for the city manager. The member who came from the Architectural Review Board, he specifically asked about, and city attorney, please correct me if I'm wrong, the Architectural Review Board has authority to review the certificates of appropriateness that are submitted within the H2 covered neighborhoods, which is all of Old Southwest, part of Gainsborough, part of Mountain View, and part of Hurt Park. He asked specifically if they could utilize their authority that they have to help the ARB agent, Ms. Gray, clear the tremendous backlog of permits that they have. They canceled the 2 previous ARB meetings. So he is specifically asking, and he contacted me because I think he received a copy of this before we did. So his question was not answered. And I would like to ask the city manager if we can confirm that the ARB is allowed, that they have the authority to help the agent clear some of these COAs, that they be allowed to do that, understanding that not every application, some are going to be more technical than others, but some of these are for like fences, getting a porch replaced. This is causing a tremendous amount of harm to our neighborhood in Old Southwest, parts of Mountain View, parts of Hurt Park, and parts of Gainsborough. I am hearing from developers, realtors, neighbors at the gym, at the grocery store, when I take a walk. People are not buying houses in these neighborhoods because of the broken process. Realtors are conveying that, whether they should or should not, to buyers. It's a major problem. And so what I would like to really know specifically is, since they have that authority, I'd like to know why they haven't been able to utilize that, why they haven't been taken advantage of. But will they, can you make a commitment that we will look into that moving forward? And can you report back to council how many applications are in the hopper that are waiting and how old they are? Okay, thank you.
I can look into that.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to reports of committees. These are comments from council members who serve as liaisons or appointees to different boards locally or throughout the region. This opportunity for us to report out. Do I have any reports? I will share that the CEDS committee, which I chair, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy Committee, had our meeting this last, I guess, a little over a week ago, maybe last week, at LEAP. And we had really great representation. We had well more than a quorum, which has sometimes been a challenge for us. But we were able to get the history on LEAP and its program, the growth of it, which has been substantial since 2009. A tour of the facility. They prepared a nice light lunch for us. And then we heard from all of the different local governments and economic development offices on different things that are happening. And there's really good synergy in terms of economic development throughout the region. So I'm happy to report that out. All right, item 11 is motions and miscellaneous business. Do we have any other inquiries or comments by members of council?
I have one, Mayor.
Ms. Powers.
I just have a question to ask about the solid waste management. I know you did a great job putting it out online and in social media about the recycling not getting picked up. However, I've had several people tell me they don't have computers, they don't see it that way. And I've missed it, but did it go on RVTV? Because they're telling me that they try to watch RVTV but didn't see it. The reason I'm saying this is in the neighborhood I live in, they've left their recycle cans out all week and they're still sitting out on the street. So how can we better get that word out to people who don't have computers and don't use the kind of.
Certainly, we put out several press releases and set up interviews with the media and worked very hard to address the concerns about people who said that fell through the gaps for them. We're happy to work with RVTV if that's fine, to put out an additional video that could be shared with the public that way.
So are they going, is it next week it reconvenes, recycle reconvenes next week? Is that?
Yes. It's
Because that's what I've been telling my neighbors anyway.
Yes,
So,
that
okay.
is next week.
Thank you. I just wanted to get that out there so that people would know that, so you're saying, yes, it is on RVTV.
No,
No.
we had not organized a video with
Because I know in the past, you can call them and they'll run a line out there, but I don't remember what the days are. There's a timeline that you have to call them and give them the information and they will run it. So as soon as you know it, if you would put it on RVTV, it would help those people that don't have computers and don't have cell phones that get instant messages from, from the
Absolutely,
city.
happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just had a comment. I want to flag for the public. I shared with all of the members of council before today that I shared with them a draft council member initiative related to a cooperative power purchase agreement that I would like for council to consider. I'll be setting up some meetings with them and hopefully staff before that we meet next, and would like to see us pursue that. And I mentioned that to the public because I'll be giving a copy to Ms. McCoy for the notes. So encourage folks to look for that there.
All right. Tomorrow is a voting day, all day. So if you haven't voted yet, we encourage you to do so. And I will remind the public that we have fare free service on Valley Metro all day. So no need to pay to get to your polling precinct and cast your vote. I believe the polling precincts are open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Is that right, or 7? 7, sorry. 6 to 7. I got them reversed. 6 to 7. All right. We don't have any vacancies to consider today, so we will stand in recess for our additional closed meetings and then reconvene at 7 p.m. in the council chamber tonight. Thank you all.